It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Lo and behold, just hours before airtime, Apple shipped new Macs. What? We have, they announced them anyway. They're shipping them next week. We will have review units next week. New MacBooks, a new Mac Mini, a new Mac M2 Pro and Max, all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly. Once again, time for the TWiT audience survey. The annual survey helps us understand you so we can make your listening experience even better. It only takes a couple of minutes, but it sure helps us out a lot. Completely optional, but if you could, please go to twit.tv/survey23. That's twit.tv/survey23. You have till the end of the month, but if you would do me a favor and do it today, I can stop mentioning it. twit.tv/survey23. And thanks in advance.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 853, recorded Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. macOS, the Lustmaker. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by 8 Sleep. Good sleep is the ultimate game changer, and the pod cover, that's the ultimate sleep machine. Go to 8sleep.com/twit to check out the pod cover and save $150 at checkout. 8 Sleep currently ships within the U.S., Canada, the U.K., and select countries in the EU and Australia. And by ZipRecruiter. Your company has goals this year. Find the right people to help you achieve them with ZipRecruiter, where 4 out of 5 employers get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. Thanks for listening to this show. As an ad-supported network, we are always looking for new partners with products and services that will benefit our qualified audience. Are you ready to grow your business? Reach out to advertise@twit.tv and launch your campaign now. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, coming to you from the beautiful TWiT studios, brought to you by IT Pro, now known as ACI Learning. Hello, everybody. Leo Laporte here, and very excited. Let's welcome our panel so we can get right to the meat of the matter. Jason Snell is here, 6colors.com. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Leo. It's good to be here. And isn't it nice that Apple did something for us so that we can stop talking about Elon Musk for a little while and talk about Macs?
They gave us something to say. Andy Ihnatko, WJ Birch. Hello, Andrew.
Hey there, hi there. I just want to let you know and everyone watching on YouTube that I'm now in week number 2 of not being able to find my 4K Logitech Brio camera after doing one show in a conference room at the library.
I think you left it in the library.
I you know what? I'm gonna go and check, but the thing is, I am so paranoid about. It's not that I don't think I'm the sort of person who could leave such a thing behind. I'm so paranoid about being such a person that I always stop, turn around, examine the room carefully. But now I'm like, I'm going to. Okay, you know what? I was at a Wendy's like 2 weeks ago. I didn't have my backpack with me, but maybe it was in my jacket pocket. I took my jacket off and felt I might be in the market for a new camera. That's what I'm saying. So I'm back to my backup Logitech 720C.
Andrew,
720.
We will gladly send you, at no cost to you, at no charge and no obligation, your very own. We'll send you whatever camera you want, or whatever camera, if you want to defer to us, we like. I think Alex Lindsay probably has a recommendation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whatever Alex recommends,
we'll send it to you. What should we get him?
An Airy LF.
Oh, yeah, no, not going to do that. No.
Oh, my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
My brother.
No.
So how about with an Angenu lens? I think you'd be set. So
that would be beautiful.
I think that right now our reigning champion is the Insta360 Link.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. And it follows him around and stuff, which is good for people who go to the library a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
That is Alex Lindsay of OfficeHours.global, and as you can tell, he is our multimedia guru. And he has now added Christmas lights to his display.
I started playing with them. I was like, I really like, the hard part with office hours, you're always trying to keep up with the Joneses. So everybody,
there's a lot of
people
Joneses
had some lights
too
up there, and I was like, I really like the lights, but I can't figure out what to do with them yet. So I had just taken apart the Christmas tree, and I had the string of lights that I'd gotten. They're like USB controlled, and I was like,
that's those thingamajiggers. What do they call those? Yeah,
you can control them. Smart lights.
John has those around his house, and he does things like the TWiT logo and stuff.
I haven't done anything special with them yet.
Everybody's getting mad at us because we're sitting on the big story.
Yes.
So weirdly, yesterday, Mark Gurman unexpectedly said, "Oh yeah, there's gonna be new Macs tomorrow."
Just like, yeah.
What?
Before MacBreak or after MacBreak? That's all we want to know.
Not to tell tales out of school, but when you know they're coming, you want it to be a surprise. And we got all the way till yesterday, and I'm like, oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, because we're all children, and Apple treats us like children on Christmas morning, when actually we'd much rather be able to sort of plan ahead before, like, we commit our department to making lots of purchases we're going to have to regret later on.
I mean, say whatever. When you're under embargo, it's really nice.
Oh, you knew. You knew. So he broke his embargo? Do you think that's what he did?
No. He talked to somebody. I saw a couple reports. Mac Rumors, I think, had a report too, and I'm like, all right, well, somebody talked.
Can you make a deal like Mark Gurman says to Mac Rumors? I'll tell you what I know if you tell me what you know, but don't quote me. And even though they're both breaking embargo, they're not breaking their own embargo in their own publication.
But Apple doesn't tell this to Mac Rumors or Mark Gurman, right? Somebody else who
well, they told you.
Heads up. Yeah. I knew something was coming. I didn't know what, although based on all of Mark Gurman's reports, it was pretty obvious what it was going to be, right?
So what, tell me just at it, because I'm of course not in this gravy train pipeline of journalists. What, how did it occur? Did somebody call you? Do you get an email?
Yeah, I got a heads up that there's news dropping. Yeah. And that was it. And literally
was it
that's
like
all.
A guy in a parking garage in a trench coat?
Not even time, right? So it's like set your alarm for 6 a.m. because it's always at 6 a.m. and it'll probably be those things because of all the reporting from Bloomberg and Mark Gurman.
But all you were told is sometime tomorrow, Tuesday?
Yeah, it was Monday.
Today, so yesterday they said
Tuesday. Sorry, Tuesday. Yes, today. What day is it today? Yes,
today's Tuesday. So they
and
told
then everything
you
else is guessing.
Something? Yeah.
So I it's just one of those things that the best moment, one of the most fun, and I get Andy's point, like it is a PR time thing, and if people can report it, they should report it. But I had a delightful moment many years ago when Mountain Lion came out, where we got a bunch of media were summoned individually to briefings, not knowing what it was about. And I was in there, and MG Sigler, who was at the time at TechCrunch, was in there.
Yes, good old MG.
And we got our briefings from Mountain Lion, and I don't know if you remember, but there were literally no reports that there was going to be a new macOS update. None, zero. And then you walk into the room, and they're like, we have a new macOS update. And you're like, what? And then I walk out, and MG is there because he's been on the phone or something, and we're walking to our cars, and we look at each other, and they're like, were you totally surprised by that? And it was like, yes. And it was kind of fun because it was not that, the people who do work like Mark Gurman to get the stuff up in advance, I'm not really a believer in that it's spoilers and that it ruins the fun, but it is fun every now and then for a legitimate surprise to happen. And Apple scrutiny is so great at this point that it basically never happens.
Well, given what we said last week and my upset over it, that Apple wasn't going to do much this year, and don't get excited for new Macs because they've taken people off the Mac team and putting them on the VR team and blah blah blah. I had geared myself up for just sadness through at least June, and we even there was no mention. Remember last week? Do you remember last week when we thought there wasn't even going to be a new Mac Mini this year? We knew there'd be those. Well, they'll do.
I didn't.
You didn't think, you never for a moment believed that?
No,
I thought it.
The Mac Mini was obvious because it was the only member of the product line that was still in the, hey, here's the really, really first swing proof of concept Apple Silicon in there. It needed to receive new Apple Silicon.
Literally 1 week ago, there were stories saying MacBook Pro refresh delayed again.
Yeah, how about that?
Gurman himself said, well, all we're going to really see is a 15-inch M2 MacBook Air.
Well, that's not true. Gurman said that these products were coming, and in fact, he reported last November that they had been delayed from a November release. Remember, Apple said we're done for the year, and so then it's like, okay, I guess those aren't coming. And then what Gurman said after that, which I thought was funny, is he tried to extrapolate, and he said, well, they probably won't do any product releases in January. They don't do that. They'll probably do a March event. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I don't know. These are products that, in fact, I'm on the record. There's a podcast where I say it. It's like, just because there's no event in January doesn't mean they can't do a press release and a video release.
They used to announce stuff in January. Remember,
these two products clearly were on the verge of being released in November, and then they pulled back.
Yeah.
So obviously they're primed. They're in the chamber. They're ready to go. And here they are.
So these were the MacBooks and the Mac Mini. By the way, I know we're completely bearing the lead. New Mac Mini, new MacBook Pro 14-inch, new MacBook Pro 16-inch. Did I miss anything?
Yeah.
Those are the three new things.
That's it.
And those are clearly delayed by the COVID-0 policy that had shut down those factories. They make these at Quanta. Where do they make these? Do we know?
I don't know. They did have a bunch of escalating delays over time, right? That led to the M2 Air being delayed. And it feels like everything just kind of got pushed back. It's also possible, though, that they just decided while they were working on their November product releases, they're like, why are we pushing this out? Let's wait till January. We'll have more of them in stock. We have other products to plug. These aren't really stocking stuffers, right? Get your friend a 16-inch MacBook Pro under the tree. We could probably survive holding them until January, but they clearly that was the issue. Is they thought this was going to be an end 22 thing, and it ended up being.
They'd like to for the buyers to be able to buy them for Christmas and the holidays, right? January's not. I can't imagine January's is because you've got budgets you've got to spend. January's kind of the worst time to release something, I would think.
Do we know what the return policy is? Because I know there's a bunch of people in office hours that had just bought Mac Minis, of course, at the end of the year. Like, well, they're not going to make any for a while. I might as well.
You get a grace period. I don't know how long it is, though.
Yeah, I think it's like 30 days. And so if you have one out there, you might want to check with your Apple store.
Take it back.
Take it back, get the new one. Because the other thing is the price dropped. So not only did they they dropped from $699 to $599 for the base unit, which is a very powerful computer.
Yeah.
So it's very, very powerful.
Is that M2 or M1 based?
That's the M2.
It's
the
M2.
M2, 8 gig. You now can, if you work hard at it, can spend $4,500 on a Mac Mini. I did look this morning. I was like, if I just max everything out,
that's why the Mac Mini is one of the most important Macs in the entire lineup, everything included, because it is the I don't have a lot of money, but I want a Mac. It's the $500.99 solution. It is also the I want a workstation, but I want several workstations for all of my office, or I want a workstation, but I don't need to have my brain hammered to death by more cores than I absolutely need. I don't need the tower configuration replaceable drives. I mean, I can't think of any. If Apple were to cancel the Mac Mini, and I don't believe that they're going to do that, but if that were to happen, I would know that, my goodness, some huge fault in philosophy has just changed inside of Apple, because it solves so many problems for Apple and its customers.
It's like a pressure release valve. It basically is if we don't make a Mac that fits you, we make this and it fits everybody else, right? And I don't know, I'm getting a vibe too, given there's a lot of comparisons that are like the 27-inch, the studio display and the Mac Mini, and they talk a lot about that, like compared to an old iMac. And I thought, I'm starting to believe those reports that the big iMac isn't coming back, because between a studio display or some other 27-inch display and this new Mac Mini,
it's a lot of computer.
I mean, does that not fill the need, or the Mac Studio fill the need that maybe that bigger iMac fulfilled? I don't know.
And I'm also curious how many monitors the Pro supports. So the Pro has more Thunderbolts. I believe it's now 4 Thunderbolts.
They did not.
Pro.
Oh, the Pro Mac Mini. Let's get this clear.
Pro Mac Mini.
So there's an M2, 8-core and 10-core, 8 gigs of RAM, and then there's the M2 Pro, 10-core CPU, 16-core GPU. And starting point is 16 gigs. So you're saying, and 4, not 1, not 2, but 3, not 4, but 3, not 3, but 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports.
A lot of us pay attention to that because, we like with my Mac Studio, it's full. Like all the ports are.
You also get an HDMI port, gigabit Ethernet, and a headphone jack, and 2 USB-A ports. So this is really like a short stack Mac Studio, is what this really is.
And Alex, it's three displays. On the Pro model. Also, we're kind of backing into this story, but one of the big parts of this new Mac Mini story is it is literally the first Apple Silicon at the Pro tier on the desktop. You've had the base model M1 and M2. You've had the the super fast Max and Ultra on the Mac Studio, but what you haven't had is that one in the middle, the Pro, that gives you a little bit more core, more GPU, more RAM, more displays. And that higher end Mac Mini model is going to give you that. And in fact, if you spec it out to about the same amount of RAM and storage as the Mac Studio, the base model Mac Studio, it basically comes right up to the price of the Mac Studio. With the same number of cores. So it's like, I mean, they did plan it out. It's like they planned it. They did plan it out, but it's a good fit because there was a piece missing under the Mac Studio if you wanted a desktop, because it was way too far down to the M1 Mini.
Yeah.
And now with the M1 and the M2 and the M2 Pro, Apple's got kind of like a coherent Apple Silicon desktop store.
Had this been out last year, I might have bought this instead of a Mac Studio. I don't really need the Mac Studio on my desk. This would have been perfect.
Yeah, the interesting thing is I think that the hard drive space is it's the same chip that is doing it for the Studio, I believe. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, you can get up to 8 terabytes.
And so the 8 terabyte, what I will say,
you don't mind spending $2,000 more or $1,200 more.
I would have been tempted to do that because the drive is screaming fast. Like on my Studio.
Where's the cutoff though? You don't want the 512, right? Is it
the 2? I think is really where the price becomes like it starts to really arc after 2.
Yeah.
But I would get as much if you're doing video or you're doing anything else. Like on my Studio, I have I only put 1 terabyte in because I thought that I always have external drives for everything that I'm working on.
Right.
The problem is my external NVMe RAID.
Yeah.
It's got 4 NVMe's and it's half the speed.
This is almost like unified memory. The storage is so close to the CPU. It's as
really
fast as it can be. I should have mentioned that if you want to pay $300 more, you can get a 12-core CPU with 19-core GPU. But there's the big limitation, and this is artificial, but I'm sure this is why they did this. 32 gigs is the max memory. So if you need more,
but not on then you go to the laptop, because the laptop I think goes to 96. The new
laptop goes to 96.
It's the difference between Pro and Max, right? The Pro chip is in between the low end and the Max, and so the Mac Mini. This is why the Mac Mini is coherent with the Mac Studio, is because the Mac Mini will take you in slots sort of A and B, the M2 and the M2 Pro. If you want to go up to C, which is and they all scale. It actually I think is more coherent than the old Intel days where there were a whole bunch of different Intel chips, and then Apple picked and chose, and then some of them had different features. Now it's sort of like they've built this thing to go M2, M2 Pro, M2 Max, and then presumably M2 Ultra, and it just kind of scales up. So if you look at the M2 Pro and say that's not enough, Apple's answer will be then you want to move up to the Studio,
or the Studio, or if you want a you can actually get a 16-inch laptop with 96 gigs of RAM.
Or the M2 Max on the Pro,
So one of the things that we did note, maybe it was just to make me feel better, is that the M2 is not as big a jump from the M1 as the M1 was from Intel.
It's true. It is. I mean, I think about these systems, especially the laptops when we talk about them, and, I still think the biggest appeal of the M2 is from people who stayed on Intel and were like, I'm going to sit out that first generation of Apple Silicon. Because the M1 to M2, I mean, the cores are faster. If you're on the base model, you get all the ProRes encoding blocks and stuff that were only on the high-end chips in M1. But basically, it's just the cores are, right? The CPU cores are faster. The GPU cores are faster. Everything's a little bit better. I don't think anybody who's got an M1 MacBook Pro should be super sad about today, right? Like I think this is an incremental.
Good. Let me underscore that, because I just bought a 16-inch M1 MacBook Pro for my son a couple of months ago, because I thought, well, I'd give up. And I don't want him to feel like he's got something less. I did say there'll probably be a new one at some point. I didn't think it'd be this quick. I would have waited had I known. And that's what you were saying, Andy. That's why these embargoes grind a little bit, because people are making buying decisions.
That's the value of Mark Gurman's reports, right? Is that he is giving people a little bit of a heads up.
And to be fair to Apple, they do have a very liberal return policy for the first few weeks of a new product, right?
And of course, you can't expect them to say, "Hey, by all means, please don't boost our third quarter revenues." But it's just it's the only time it kind of gets up my nose is when you see that as like the official Apple line. Oh, we want to preserve the surprise, and the delight, saying, "Okay, look, if that's the reason, I can deal with less surprise in my life in 2023."
They want to preserve the revenue from the previous product.
Keep selling.
There's a famous anecdote in technology, the Osborne effect, where Adam Osborne, who's long gone, had a portable computer, the Osborne 1, that was very, very popular, very big seller. Mistakenly, he said there's going to be a new Osborne 2 months before it was available, killed the Osborne 1 and eventually the company. So that's the you don't want to Osborne yourself is what people will say.
Yeah, and I think it's generally prudent to, if you're shipping, not to say anything until you've been you're going to ship a week later.
Well, you can tell
later,
though, by the way, all of these things are available if you get the base model in a week, next Tuesday. And even if you don't, even if like I spec the hell out of this thing, it's still available the 31st. So my guess is the elves over Christmas were just cranking these things out as fast as they
I think so.
They have a lot in stock, right? This is not going to be the one where they go, "Oh, we could have sold more if we'd only had more." They have made a lot of them.
That's why it was such a surprise to everybody. But the new case design was Nordic wood with dowels. So.
Those elves love Nordic wood. So
candy cane logo.
That's another question.
Beautiful carving.
Is this a redesign from the M1s, 14s, and 16s, or the M1 Mini? No.
I'm curious about the Mini because the Mini M1 Mini had like empty space in it, and the footprint of it is actually slightly different. So I wonder, somebody's going to have to open one up and see what's in there. The MacBook Pro, I would imagine, is almost identical to the old model, right? Because they just did their refresh there, and this really is more of what we always call a speed bump, where they just kind of refresh to the latest tech and let it keep going.
And at least on the laptops, they haven't added any ports or anything like that. They're the same.
No. But you're right, that Mac Mini, the high-end Mac Mini config, which is replacing the old Intel Mac Mini that was still in the product line, the space gray one, it's gone, and now we're just back to a high-end M2 Mac Mini that's got all the extra Thunderbolt ports and will drive more displays and all of those
In
things.
Apple's words, it has more muscle and more hustle. Giggity.
Did you say so?
Yeah. I thought that the release strategy was interesting, to have a fully built presentation but no live stream and no warning. It was we're just going to turn this on.
Was this 6 a.m. they put this out, or when did they put it out?
6 a.m. is when they generally do these
Pacific,
drops.
9 p.
Pacific,
9 a.m. Eastern.
I think they would have done better if they had done it live, told us there's going to be an update on it, and the reason for that is that I found myself very impatient. So when we're watching live, and we do kind of watch parties within office hours, and so we kind of talk about it. We're talking about things that are going on, and it gives us something to do. When I'm not watching live, I really just want the highlight reel. Like I don't really care about the build up that they do. All the superlatives and all the setup and everything else. When it's not live, I don't want to hear it. I realized I very quickly wanted to just jump until I saw a graphic of the chip, and then I'd back up a little bit and watch through it. And so I think that was a little
they started with a 48-second promo reel for the M1, weirdly, and then go to John Turnus, who is the SVP engineering inside the Steve Jobs Theater. So this looks exactly like the video you'd see at Apple.
They've got the model. If we ever thought that they were going to go back to the stage,
I think this is.
It feels, in fact, like this might have been produced originally for November.
But notice, as Scooter X pointed out, January 17th is in the menu bar.
Well, yeah, but I mean, all of that stuff is special effects.
Yeah, do you know how to do that, Alex? Could I change the date on the menu bar if I decided to?
It's pretty complicated. I might have to get ILM involved to change the date.
I wouldn't put it past Apple to get ILM involved, I have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
So these are all M2s. There's M2. They started with the Mini. There's M2 regular, and the Mini only up to the M2 Pro. And then in this 14 and 16th, you can go to the Max. Is the Max merely accessing more memory and more GPU, CPUs? Yes. Basically. Yeah,
more performance cores and way more GPUs, I think it's twice the memory bandwidth.
So is this, remind me, so the M1 Pro was still a single core, or was it dual core? And then they went to the Max, which was 4 core, or no, that was the dual core.
There are many cores, right? But what you're thinking of is
chips on the die, I guess, or
the
whatever.
The Ultra is 2 of those Max
crisscrossed,
chips.
yeah,
crisscrossed.
It's a plus or whatever.
But they all, and what's interesting too is that the core count isn't actually that different. between the Pro and the Max and all of that. It's the GPUs.
Here's the quilt, the product quilt. Oh, I gotta pause it. It keeps self-starting. Here's the product quilt for. This is the base M2. Yes. Oh, see, you keep starting. Apple doesn't want me to look at that quilt too long. Then there's another. Then we go back to Johnny in the lab, or is that Turnus? That's Johnny Turnus, not Johnny Sarugi. And then we go back in the lab. And we have another quilt for I don't know what M2 Pro. 5 people, 1 small business. I don't want to see that stuff. I don't care about making sweatshirts with my M2 Pro. Here we go. Here we go. I'm gonna get a quilt. Let's get a quilt. Jeez. I don't know why they take us down on YouTube for showing these videos. It's almost impossible. Here's the insane Apple graph that has no zero. No, makes no sense. It's 20. It's faster.
Right.
Faster. It's faster.
Faster. Yeah. I don't you like that they make theirs 100%. It's always 100%.
Whatever
and
it
then
is.
Everything trails
even our
behind it, but the labels are about it, which is it's a weird. I have questions as somebody who used to work for a magazine that published charts, and I publish charts myself. There's some charting issues going on here, but it's marketing, right? This is marketing. They actually call it performance marketing. That's what they call it inside Apple. But the thing to remember about the Pro and the Max is that the Max is all about doubling the GPUs and doubling the memory bandwidth. So the cores don't actually change. It's the base model is 10 cores, which is 6 performance and 4 efficiency, and then you ramp up to the higher end model with 12 cores, 8 performance, 4 efficiency. But the big jump is when you go to Max, it's still 12 cores, but it's of CPU, but it goes from 19 to 30.
38 cores GPU. Whoa.
And then you can configure it up to 38, and you can do that.
Is that because we heard those problems potentially with the graphics processing on the A14 that this is maybe to compensate?
No, this is not based on the current A chip. It's based on the previous generation.
It's an A13, kids. So they kick it down the road. 30% faster GPU, up to 30% faster GPU. It's just to be clear, it's A15. A16 is the one where there was that story about them having to go back to the old GPU. Oh God, I'm so
the numbers are very confusing.
No,
they are.
67 billion numbers, transistors, neural engine, 40% faster. It's got the ProRes playback. That's a big deal. 5 nanometer technology. No 3 nanometers yet. Is 3 nanometers the A16? Do we know? Is that going to be?
Yeah, or is it?
I don't know if it's still. I don't think it's going to turn that fast.
Yeah. Well, TSMC has it. Okay, I can go through the whole thing. Longest ever battery life on a Mac. That's for
22 hours.
That's for the 14 or the 16.
I think that's the 16.
I didn't watch this. You can tell I slept in.
Let's see. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a blank. Now she's standing in front of a blank wall. I'm not playing the audio because they will take us down on YouTube if I do. 96 gigs of unified memory. Sure, Jason Snell can play clips in his show, but not me. Don't know why. It's just the rule. So lots of battery life in something. It's longest with a lot of O's.
Oh.
Yeah,
we're live streaming this now. So there.
No, don't. I'm not live streaming it. No, don't be confused. Don't be confused by what you're seeing. That's not a live stream.
It's 20. So they made this 22-hour claim, but on their website under tech specs, it actually says that it's 18 hours of Apple TV app movie playback, 12 hours wireless web. But it's good. Right, those are.
So where did the 22 come from?
I think the 22 is the 16. Yeah, so the 16's got the bigger battery,
it's got a giant
and it's
battery.
22-hour movie playback. And they actually say it's like 6 notches up from the lowest setting on brightness, and then they just let it run. And
it's nothing
I was talking to a
do.
friend about this. Right, I mean, are you up for 22 hours working on your MacBook Pro? If you are, I guess this is the one for you.
But what about the days when you forgot to plug it in and you just need 4 hours the next day before you get to the charger?
Yes.
Yeah. More hours is always more better.
Yeah. They have a whole, go down to the footnotes and you can read the Testing conducted by Apple in November and December. What? You had these then? Using pre-production 16-inch MacBook Pro models of the Apple M2 Pro 12-core, 19-core, 32 gigs, 8 terabyte. Tested using a 1-minute picture-in-picture project with 23 streams of Apple ProRes 422 video at 2160 resolution, 29.97 frames per second. And it's approximate. It's approximate. We approximate. It's all approximate. Still, yeah, more bad. But is that fair? It's marketing, I know, but this is this? They wouldn't say it's not. It's the longest ever. Would they say that if it weren't? Is what I'm saying.
No. That's based on their tests. Yes,
but they test it the same way every time.
They know that if they're called on that and they're cooking their figures, that they're going to get in trouble. And I will also say, the people who are in that department are people who used to work at Macworld with me back in the day.
Okay,
they're good people. Does Apple look? If they do 5 different tests, which one is Apple going to pick? They're going to pick the one where Apple looks the best, right? Because it is marketing, but it's based on reality. That much is true.
I want them to say
the number you see
figures based on reality.
It's based on reality, but the number you see is chosen. I mean, is it cherry picked? Yeah, probably, because it's marketing, right?
But they have several realities from which to choose. Yes, they as a $2 trillion company, they can make several realities.
Exactly. The last thing you want to do is be like, guys, I got bad news. I did a battery test. I did our regular battery test, and it's the best ever. But I did this different battery test, and it's bad. And they're like, well, we won't use that one. I mean, it's not hard. Let's not use that one.
Yeah. Okay, but we can fairly well trust this. I think that it's going to be
Apple's standards against its own products also means that it's less likely to be kind of fakery because it's their own products and not like versus the competition where it starts to get a little weird.
And to be fair, I don't think there's any PC in this class that has anywhere near this kind of battery life, although there's a new AMD chip that looks pretty good and it's possible this could happen. But Apple really has leapfrogged the industry with battery life, and that's one of the real reasons to get an Apple laptop. There's nothing even close really in this class.
Again, that's the complex problem for everybody else in the industry is that Apple now has an incredible amount of control over its own destiny, and its ability to build more efficient systems is really, it can move much faster and than everyone else because everyone else is cobbling together.
Right.
They have to have the OS agree with what the hardware is doing, and then they have to have
they have a much more heterogeneous environment. That's part of the problem. Apple knows exactly what hardware it's going on.
And that seems to be seeping into dogma as well. Not to we're hearing more rumors that Apple wants to manufacture its own panels, at least for phones and watches. And that's not because they don't think that Samsung and the rest aren't making really high quality panels. It's because they want to optimize power for every other component inside the device. So that's dogmatic.
Somebody at Apple said about the M1, but I think it's absolutely still true, which is one of the things the people on the inside know and that they try to let the public in on a little bit is it used to be they took products off a shelf from Intel and made a computer.
Right.
And now the chip is designed knowing what computers that chip will go into, right? Like it's all kind of purpose built. When they made several years ago, when they're like, okay, M2 Pro, where's that going to go? They said Mac Mini and MacBook Pro, and maybe that's it, or maybe there's some other stuff. Like they know what models for each chip. And that is a big advantage because they don't build features in that they don't think those models need. They know what the cooling is going to be. They know what the power constraints are. It's really, it's an advantage. It's a big advantage for them.
And they're making the hardware and writing the code that runs in the hardware, the entire infrastructure. And then they're telling the developers, here's how you take advantage of it. Every developer that we talk to is like, well, if you just write it the way Apple tells you to write it and you use all the libraries they give you, it gets faster, way faster, because everything is optimized to go through that system. And for people who used to write their own libraries or I'm going to do it my own way, they're starting to fall behind. They're having stability issues. They're having, difficulties writing their own engines. And that's going to probably continue to be harder and harder because the entire system is flowing, as a single unit, which is we've never seen before.
Jason, do you have the machines in-house or no?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
You will at some next week.
I can I mean, yeah, I definitely plan on reviewing them, but I don't have anything now.
Okay.
So next Tuesday,
Jason,
right?
Jason,
Tuesday
I just had.
You want to pan around the room and make sure that they're.
No.
I believe you.
I don't.
I
wouldn't lie to you. I would be evasive if I
You'd
had
be
them. And
evasive.
couldn't tell
We
you.
know how the
But
evasive sounds.
I don't
and that
have
was
them.
not.
There are no new products in my garage right now.
I just got an idea for a canary. Like you put like a Newton message pad on a shelf behind you. That means as long as that pad is there, it means that you don't have anything under NDA from Apple. If we happen to see that it's not there, you didn't say anything. You just rearrange stuff on your shelf.
What if the what if the lava lamp is not lit? Is that like the secret code?
Oh shoot! It just got turned on.
Oh no!
It's off. It's on. Oh, you're just messing with. Stop it! Just stop it. So here is the family photos. This is the M2 that we've had all along in our nice little MacBook M2 MacBook Air, which I quite like. 100 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth, 24 gigs of memory. This is one thing that kind of threw me because I thought, from now on everything will be a multiple of 24. No, M2 Pro 32 gigs of unified memory. But they did double the memory bandwidth. Is that because there's twice as much? I don't know what that means. It means no, it's just twice as fast. And then there's the M2 Maxi. Oh, they're not in the family photos yet for the Maxi. So this is the Mini. That's why. Okay.
I think the reason it's 24 is because they got hit so hard on their limit being 16 that they made an effort to get it to be 2 banks of 12.
Yeah.
And then on the higher end one, on the Pro, they didn't quite feel the pressure to do that, and so they're happy to keep it at 2 banks of 16.
So we're going to go back to the 32 multiples of 32 for the Pro and the Max, I guess. So that's the Mini. Let me go to the. It's interesting. The laptops are really where you see the performance stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, their examples are amazing, right? Like, I think forgive me because I know this has been a topic forever here, but this idea that how much computer do you really need? Like the MacBook Pro performance is where they can boast. They really can boast on the M2 Pro and Max performance. The problem is, in order to boast, they have to get increasingly esoteric with the. Yeah. I mean, it's not esoteric for Alex, right?
For almost
everybody else.
For years, they promoted the megahertz
high end.
Yeah, they promoted the megahertz myth, and you don't want to look at numbers, and now you want to look at numbers because they got them.
Well, yeah, and it's not going to be like, look at Microsoft Word or even look at Photoshop. These days, it's like look at the high end, look at video editing,
photogrammetry,
and 3D and compositing, and the highest end stuff because that's where they can shine and they can blow away the competition. It's just this question of like, I think the truth is most people who are buying a MacBook Pro are doing it for the screen or the ports. And not for the super, super high end power, but it is there for the people who do need it.
Now I'm going to really throw myself because 96 gigabytes, which is the max on the M2 Max, is actually 2 times 32 plus 24. So the 24 is back, baby. I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah. I'm really keen to see how a Mac.
2 times 32 is 64. Oh, it's 332s. Never mind. You're right. My math was bad. Okay. I need a computer to do this, you understand? I can't do it in my head.
Yeah.
400 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth, though.
That's insane. It really makes me wonder how many Mac Pro customers they're basically leeching off now. All the people that were, there's just too big, went back when there was way too big a gap between the maximum performance you can get out of an Intel Mac Mini versus what you can get out of a basic spec Intel Mac Pro. Now, a lot of those people are saying, no, this is the Mac Mini well spec'd out is going to do everything I want it to do. And I'm really keen to see when Apple comes out with the new updated Mac Pros, what is going to be the difference between a maxed out, if you it's $5,000 or $6,000 to spend on the most performance in a Mac, what would you get? Would you get a Mac Mini at the top of the spec, or would you get sort of an entry level or just above entry level Mac Pro? It's no longer really clear what these two.
Well, here's an interesting stat: the MacBooks can only do 2 external displays, while the Mini can do 3. So if you want more displays, you'd get a Mini.
Well,
that's a critical difference for me.
Yeah.
I think number one is I think the Mac Pros, I'd be surprised if they're any below $6,000. Like I think that's going to be the opening.
Okay.
They may start at 10 because what they have right now is they have Mac Minis that go up to $4,500. They've got Studios that go up to $10,000 or $12,000. And so I think your Mac Pro starts at, I think it could start as high as $10,000, as low as $6,000. But that's about the where it's going to begin. And what it's going to, number one is I agree with Andy. I think that the expectations now of a Mac Pro and what a Mac Pro looks like are very high. So if we say it's a Pro, this is going to be a beefy machine. It is going to be designed, here's
a nice graph. I do like it that Apple compares it to themselves. See this little teeny weeny line there? That's an i7 MacBook Pro. See that little teeny, see that really big long line there? 16 times faster.
Well, and
that's running at Foreman grill temperatures too.
Yeah. No, it's not though. That's the beauty of it. The Intel is, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Intel,
yes, right. Yeah.
But I think also you're going to have the Pro is going to give you the expandability. Like right now, every time I want to add a card, I'm thinking about what kind of external, whether it's Sonnet or OWC or whatever. What am I going to put on the outside to put the card in? The Mac Pro is going to have cards. Probably anywhere from 2 to 6 cards that are going to be available to us in that Mac Pro, and that for pros. That's what they need. And then you're going to have a very, very fast machine that probably tops out at, I'm going to guess $80,000 is probably the
holy cow. I guess that rules me out.
You can't get a Mac Pro and an Apple car.
Yeah,
you have to choose one or the other.
Should I buy this house or a Mac Pro? I don't know.
And I know people who have the $60,000 version of the current one. And they said it's pretty fast.
It's a peppy. It's a peppy machine.
It'd be hard.
Minecraft, forget it.
Yeah.
So they're happy with it. But I think that the thing is that we'll see how far Apple goes. But you could see potentially a 1 terabyte of RAM. Very, very large, hard drive space, things that turn it into an entirely different level of machine. And again, when you're doing really high end visual effects, when you're doing really, like I used to work on a machine that was $60,000, an SGI machine. And that was all we could use to make that actually work. So it's not out of the question. It just depends on what kind of returner you're going to get. And what that opens up for is for those developing for that, it allows them to build assumptions into it. This is ray tracing, global illumination, from a 3D perspective, and oftentimes time is money, and so it adds up. And so I think it'll be really interesting. But the Pro is now, like when you see the Mac Mini here, you're thinking, I don't even know what they'd add to the like it's hard to imagine now.
Yeah. So. It looks like the displays are identical except for size, right? 14.2, 16.2 on the MacBook Pros. But in every other respect, 120 hertz, high contrast ratio, all of that other stuff.
Yeah, these are the same computer, essentially, other than the battery size and the screen size. Otherwise you're getting... And the same as last time, essentially, too.
Still got a notch.
There's not...
We're all in on the notch.
Is limited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is what we're getting. I'm not going to get the monitor, but this is what I'm about to buy a new computer for my parents-in-law, and that $599 Mac Mini with a monitor is going to replace a pretty old iMac that we got them before, and it's just the perfect machine, to do that kind of thing. And I am curious where the iMac lives inside of this like really strong Mac.
An iMac world. Pro, you mean? A larger iMac?
I don't think that.
You don't think it's
that
really
makes sense.
It doesn't. No,
it doesn't make sense anymore.
Just get a studio.
I don't think it does.
Get a studio with a monitor.
Having the 27-inch display means that you can even scale, right? Like use a laptop or get the Mini or get the higher end Mini or get the low end Studio or get the high end Studio or get the Mac Pro. Like it is. And that's, I mean, we all kind of got trained in iMac land because the only way to get a powerful Mac desktop was to buy a big iMac. And I feel like Apple is deprogramming us a little bit.
Well, and I think a lot of us were talking about it for a long time. We're like, just make the Mac Mini fat. Like at one point in time in Pixel Core, I think I owned 35 Mac Minis and they were all glued to do all these little things. And I was like, I just wish they'd upgrade these things. And it went for years. And it's so exciting to see these little Mac Minis that we all knew were that powerful. And I think it was just a heat issue. And now that they've gotten through that, we're just seeing this incredible expansion of these really powerful little machines.
Yeah, and I still think that the iMac Pro is not long for this world. I think it was really clear that this was a stopgap after the failure of the Quaker Oats box, the cylinder-shaped Mac Pro. They needed something super powerful that would make power users happy. It was the easiest one to build. It was the clumsiest one to repair, and now there's really no need for it. Now that you've got Apple Silicon across the board, now you've got Apple Silicon on the Mac Mini that people can pair with their own displays and upgrade a Mac without upgrading the display. I really hope that Apple decides to rebrand sort of the iMac as something akin to the original Mac, the personable one, the one that you have on your desktop and your kid's desktop and the ones you buy a dozen of for the office. This is not, but when you want power, when you need to spec something out for a specific task that's really mission important, that's when you go to a Mac Mini, or that's when you go to a Mac Pro.
John, do you want to buy a new Mac Mini? Do we need one? That's two different questions, I understand. All right.
Box there and replace it with an M2 Pro.
All right.
What the heck?
What does it do?
It's a Zoom ISO.
Huh?
For Zoom ISO.
For Zoom ISO.
Although
but Alex said we could just use that old little tiny 8 gigabyte RAM one.
And we have been, and it's working fine.
It's working fine.
But we really need to put that in the conference room.
Okay, let's put it in the conference room.
Get an M2 into the
and put it in perspective. I think Andy sent me that the M2 Air is at 8 SDI outputs from Zoom is 30 to 35% CPU utilization. So the Mac Mini will do at least as good if you get and so you have it's a lot of horsepower.
That's actually
I'm so upset. I'm so upset too, because I've been saying all along that I've got like $1,000, $1,500 taped to the underside of my desk, waiting for the first really good Apple Silicon and Mac Mini. But I needed that to happen like September, October, November, when I feel like when I feel like I'm flush with cash, I can spend whatever I want. The fact that it happens in January, which is when like I'm doing my budgeting for the rest of the year, I'm thinking that I'm probably going to be homeless within the next 3 weeks. Is this a good time to spend $1,000 on a new Mac? The old one works just fine. Like, I should be pre-ordering this right now. This is exactly what I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. I want to watch.
I've heard that from a lot of people. I think it's maybe Leo can send you that M2.
I'm ordering at least one.
It's I've heard from a lot of people who've been really waiting for this, because I do believe that high-end model is what a lot of people have been keeping their eyes on. And the M1 version of the Mini was just a little too limited.
Yeah.
And so that higher end model being there, and also let's just appreciate, I know that Apple's never going to be the low price leader, but there was a time when you could not buy a Mac for $599, right. And for $599 to get what that M2 Mini has in it, it's more power than almost anybody, like that 99% of users will ever need.
Yeah, and the sweet spot for me is another $100 over that $599 is the 16 gigs. So now you can get for $799. You can get a 16 gig Mac Mini M2, and to me that's the sweet spot of where I'm buying them right now. And I'm going to buy a couple.
I'm super, super pleased that they have a really, really cheap, a very, very competitive with Windows machines, Macintosh out there, because this 2023, people probably already have a screen they can plug into it. They probably already have a keyboard and a mouse. If not, it'll cost them $50 for the pair for not even the worst one at Amazon. Apple really needs to make sure they're still saying that, hey, look, Macs are for everybody. It's not just for people who can afford to have to pay extra for the logo.
Well, and the way the video that they showed or released this morning was tuned, it was really for creative professionals. That's what that's where they're really aiming for this, right? You're the one. What's this going to do to the?
Yeah, and what's this going to do to the Mac Studio? Because I feel like I'm part of a really large group that really lusted after the Mac Studio, but even then sensed that this is more club than I actually need for what I do. I bet that there's going to be I'm going to get better bang for the buck with a Mac Mini where I can spend the same amount of money to get extra storage and extra RAM rather than extra CPU that requires these double height muffin fans that aren't going to really help me out.
I think
did somebody say double height muffins?
Right?
I'm ready.
Yeah. It's the muffin tops. It's only the muffin tops. Maybe.
I haven't had lunch yet. I'm sorry, that kind of slipped out.
I think the Studio, there's a real question about the Studio, because does the existence of a Mac Pro down the road mean that the studio doesn't need to exist, or is the studio really thought of as being that kind of higher end Mac Mini, so that because like I said, performance wise and price wise, it kind of works. But the question is, in the long run, would they really want the Mac Pro? But to Alex's point, the Mac Pro is going to be so expensive. I think a lot of high-end professionals, the Mac Studio would be enough. But I think so,
yeah.
I do wonder if it's going to be like the iMac Pro and be kind of a one-off, and that in the end the strategy is going to be Mac Mini and Mac Pro and not Mac Studio. I hope not, though. I like the Mac Studio. I think there's just a little bit of overlap.
Great. I love it.
I
you know what you need, Jason? Make a 6 colors chart that shows the linearity of the product line.
All right. You got it.
Because that's kind of what you want to see, and if there's overlap, that's I'm sure there's somebody inside Apple who's done that, and those are the things that are a risk, right? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Alex.
Well, and I think that there's, if you look at the Mac Mini, I think it tops out at about $4,500. The Studio starts at about $3,000. Maybe a little bit lower than that. So there's like a $1,500 to $2,000 overlap. If you take the Studio and go up and then go backwards $2,000 or $3,000, you end up at about $8,000 or $9,000 for the Mac Pro and then up. And maybe there's a little bit more overlap there, but I still feel like they all solve different problems. Like the Mac Pro is going to be probably considerably bigger. It is, it'll be interesting to see, like if you decked out a Mac Mini, it'll be interesting to see because of heat, whether it slows down. The Mac Mini, I don't know, I think that the Studio, obviously, half of the Studio is a big fan. It's there for a reason, so I think that we may find that the Mac Mini can't sustain long renders, long calculations. In a short-term thing, it's fine, but I do things with my Mac Studio that take a solid 4 or 5 hours for it to do its work, and so I don't think that the Mac Mini will sustain the speed that the Mac Studio will on longer renders.
Because you're not going to have the cooling. That Mac Mini, Mac Studio, half of it is cooling.
Yeah, so I think
they're not going to be able to do that in a Mini.
I think we'll just see an M2 Mac Studio, and it's going to be a lot faster, and I think the heat dissipation, there's more I/O in the Studio. I'm using every single output of my Mac Studio, and now I have to figure out breakouts and everything else for it because, I've got all kinds of stuff going into it. And so it is not I don't think that, I think the Mac Studio is well placed. I think that the Mac Mini is well placed. The odd computer out is the iMac. That's the part I don't get.
The Mac Studio also, you could view it as being essentially a Mac Pro, and maybe even have, like, the Mac Pro would be the Ultra. The Mac Studio has an Ultra config. The difference is the Mac Pro has the huge case, and you're going to be able to do expansion of some kind or other on it. And for people who want that, it'll be there. But that Mac Studio does fulfill people who just want the power, but they don't need that huge expansion in the giant box in their house.
Yeah.
I apologize. I think I got it wrong. I'm looking at what do you call these? The product quilt? Andy invented this term, feature quilt. I love this term.
Feature quilt.
I'm looking at the feature quilt for the big laptop. It does go up to 4 external displays, including 8K with HDMI. So I think I must have been looking at this product spec for the M2 Pro. So if you get a Max, 4 displays.
4 externals.
Externals, 5 total with the laptop display. That's pretty sweet for somebody, the day trader.
It's a big deal. A lot of us have been, especially folks that are doing, a lot of folks in office hours, of course, are doing a lot of Zoom stuff that they don't necessarily want to get the whole breakout, but it's been a real problem that the Mac Mini can only do 2 videos out. So having 4 out means that you can now take potentially 4 participants out and do that. Of course, I'm using 3 monitor out of my Studio right now. And so it's useful.
Can I?
Yes.
Actually, Marquez Brownlee just tweeted something that I feel is probably the quote of the week. He says, "Fun fact: if you plug in a 4-year-old $50,000 plus Mac Pro into Apple's trade-in site, you don't even get enough credit to buy an iPhone 14 Pro."
Aw, shucks.
$970 in trade-in value.
Aw. So how do we sort this out? This is, of course, what a normal person is asking is, well, which one do I need? I know which one I want. Which can I afford, and how much is enough? How do we decide all that?
I think you need to decide what are you really going to do with it. Like, I'm going to get the $599 from my parents-in-law because that'll do more than they can imagine.
Yeah.
What they're going to do with their Mac. They mostly do word processing, so it's really inexpensive. I'm going to probably get a couple of the $699s or $799. I'm going to put a 16 gigs in and get them for my kids, so that they, I was looking at laptops and I was like, oh. I just feel like it was starting to add up pretty quickly to a real number. And so this is going to be.
Well, that's Apple, isn't it? It adds up quickly to a real number.
Yeah, so, it does. I mean, with those laptops, and I was like, I just feel like there's a laptop tax, which is that you're paying for the chicness and the compactability and the monitor and everything else. Yeah. And as someone who now doesn't really use a laptop at all, I have a laptop.
But you're unusual.
Charged.
The world has moved to laptops. Desktops are...
well, it depends on how much, in the world of working remotely, how much do you use your laptop is the big question, and whether your iPad can take over. I mean, I still carry my laptop when I travel, but I almost never open it up, and so the...
what do you do instead? Do you have an iPad or what do you...
I have an iPad. Yeah, I have an iPad.
Interesting.
So I have it's funny, when I travel, I take my older iPad, I put that paper surface on it. I just love drawing on it.
So I did that too, and I thank you for that recommendation.
So pleasurable.
Yeah.
But I don't want to put it on my newest one because I look at it for color. But the older one I carry.
Well, that's why you need multiple iPads.
Which I have. Lots of them. So but I think that I think the higher end one, I think that especially if you start wanting to do hard work, you're not ready to buy a Mac Studio. I think, getting the Pro, getting a little bit of extra RAM, again, for the folks that are in office hours, the idea of having 4 outputs is a big deal. So there's a lot of things there that start to, I think you just have to really look at what are you using. If you're going to be I still think if you're an editor, like you're doing lots of Final Cut or Resolve, you could definitely do it on the smaller ones. You might have a junior editor working on this, but if you're really getting paid for your time, you're still going to get a studio. I don't think this solution. What I do think is interesting about it is as render nodes. So a lot of us have, we have extra computers that we're sending out renders to. And, I'm interested in taking like 3 or 4 of these and sending out renders from Cinema 4D and just like, if you don't run out of RAM, you can just send these out, and they're incredibly powerful little nodes to send out. But again, you want more processor, more RAM, so you might get the higher end version of the Mac Mini.
As usual, ask yourself what can't you do with your current hardware, and that'll lead the way.
Oh, that's the terrible way. I can do everything I want with my current hardware.
Exactly.
That doesn't give me any leeway.
$599 for you.
Yep.
I'm very for me, that M2's Air. There's no reason to upgrade that. There's nothing. At no point do I ever say, "Oh boy, I wish this were faster."
Yeah. No, but for me, it's like I want 3 displays on my desktop. I want to be able to stream 4K without any problems whatsoever, at least, and also for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. And then after that, it'll just come down to, gee, it would be nice to have extra RAM. Gee, it would be nice to have extra storage. But those are my reasons for wanting like this new Mac Mini. And yeah, you can really get yourself into such a trap by thinking that, oh, the Mac Studio, that'll do exactly what I want, or hey, I should wait for the Mac Pro, that'll do exactly what I want. I should also have the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Like, yeah, not as a freelance journalist in a rapidly collapsing market, Andy, with ChatGPT taking jobs away from you. You should probably think about how much for your work you can move on to a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of this is lust, not rational thinking.
That's Apple's most successful product.
It is.
The lust generator.
Hardware lust. Yeah. And I understand that. And I don't know if it's my job to talk you off the ledge, but most of us have had more than enough power for years.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the reason you get a MacBook Pro, I would argue, is not the processor, although the processor is going to do more than the MacBook Air. It's that screen is amazing, right? That the LED backlit display with high dynamic range support is beautiful, and it comes in 14 and 16. Those are bigger screen sizes than you're going to get on the MacBook Air. It's got more ports, right? It's got more support for better support for external displays.
I do miss my SD card reader as a photographer.
Yeah.
That was a nice thing. I in my head think I should have an HDMI port, but I have absolutely no use for it.
Although I will say, if all you need is an SD card reader, you probably shouldn't upgrade from an Air to a Pro just for a card reader. I could sell you. I could sell you a USB card reader for that. But like, it's just funny that Apple's gotten to this point, which, as impressive as these processors are, I think the truth is that the greatest appeal that the MacBook Pro has over the MacBook Air is in the other stuff. It is in battery and screen and ports. And that's the stuff where it wins the day for a sizable price premium that a lot of people are willing to pay. And I think that's not unreasonable. Personally, I chose the Air because I thought, this is way more than I need. But I totally understand the Pro. And if you've got an M1 Pro, I don't really see the need to go to the M2 Pro. All it is incrementally faster. And that's probably not speed you're using. And if you are using that speed and need more of it, like Alex probably, you already know.
Yeah. Well, and for what I was going to do, I was about to buy more Mac Minis for, I could do them on the M1 just fine. I'm just glad that there's an M2 that can do it too. Yeah. So and I think that it is a turnover for, I think if you bought the M1, I wouldn't worry about it. If you have Intels though, this is a big, this is the time.
There's no reason to be on a Mac, Intel Mac at this point.
Biggest audience for these products, I think, really is all the people who said, I'm going to wait for the second generation, right? Yeah. I don't trust the first generation of the chip transition. And I mean, it's gone great. You kind of missed out, but if you were careful and waited, now is a great time.
I have an idea for a new ad campaign for Apple. I'll give this to you for free, Tim. MacOS, the Lustmaker. The Lustmaker.
MacOS, the Mac of fate.
MacOS, the Lustmaker. I don't know. It just hit me.
Too bad Ricardo Montalban is no longer with us.
Fine.
He could really...
Corinthian software.
Silicon.
The silicon. Somebody in the chat room is asking, Alex, Lindsay, what's the name of that paper thing you put on your iPad?
It was... it's a pick. I made it a pick. It was a pick. So if you go to MacBreak Picks, or MBW Picks or whatever, you'll find it. I don't know what. I have to look at it. I bought it off of Amazon.
Yeah, there's 2 on Amazon, and I bought both. And they're the same.
I'm looking at my orders right now.
I wanted to see if there was a difference, and there isn't. So it doesn't matter which one you get.
I did find that the application was good. My big thing is like how hard is it to put on, and it did a pretty good job of. I got the Paper Feel screen protector compatible with the iPad 12.9.
So I got that and the Paper Like, and I can't remember which one I'm using. To be honest,
it'll set you back $7.91.
Yeah.
so
Paper Feel or Paper Like. Either way,
I have the paper. Yeah,
they're highly competitive. I ordered them both because they were so cheap.
Yeah,
and you get it by the screen size and all that.
I draw all my. I talked about this before. Right? I draw all my keynotes. I sketch them all out every slide before I start working on them to save time.
Actually, get the Paper Feel. It is cheaper.
And I just felt it just makes it so much more pleasurable. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just there's something about the drag there that makes it just feel like you're writing on paper.
But you said that it doesn't. The color is not quite as. It's like an.
It's matte.
Yeah.
So it's matte, and part of what I use my iPad for is to see what color I'm actually creating when I don't have a color correct monitor, and so I need that one to be like I need the blacks to be really black, and the whites to be what they need, and so my newer one I keep clean. I don't have the brand new one because I was like, I already got 2 Pros.
They're both the same material. It's PET. It's polyethylene terephthalate. Yeah. So, But you know what? Why get the $39 one when you can get the $10 one? It seems to me pretty clear.
It worked great.
Yeah. I did buy both because I think I wanted to be able to tell people which, and then I promptly forgot. So get the $10. I don't think there was a difference, as I remember.
I like it.
Good. Now, let's take a break, because I'll tell you about something I like. More to come with MacBreak Weekly, but I want to talk about my very good night's sleep I had last night. Actually, this morning it was funny. It was really, I guess we had a frost overnight, Jason. It was really, really, really cold. And I like to sleep with the windows open. And Lisa got up. I got up about 6:30. Lisa got up and then immediately went back to bed and turned our 8 sleep up to 10 and texted me coffee, please. And I went in, I brought her coffee, and she said it was just too cold. I had to get back in. But that's the beauty of the 8 sleep. You would never know it. We have this amazing 8 sleep pod cover. Now, you can 8 Sleep, you can go with a mattress. They make them, but we just have the cover because we like our mattress. Put the cover over. It's like a mattress pad, but it does something very special. The pod cover features a dual zone temperature control. So each of you have different settings. You could set each side of the bed to as cool as 55 degrees. And by the way, that's chilly. In a hot summer night, 55 degrees, you got air conditioning in your bed. Or as hot as 110 degrees. And by the way, that's toasty, roasty on a cold winter's night. You're going to love it. But it goes another step farther because this is a smart device. It has sensors built into it based on your biometrics, the temperature in your room, and your sleep stage. The pod cover adjusts the temperature throughout the night to reduce the number of wake-ups, to increase your deep sleep. And deep sleep is the key to everything. Consistent good sleep can reduce the likelihood of serious health issues, decrease the risk of heart disease, lower your blood pressure. There's even studies that say it reduces the risk of Alzheimer's. If you're struggling to fall asleep, if you wake up in the middle of the night, if you're fighting with your partner over the thermostat, you need the 8 Sleep pod cover. It's amazing. Lisa and I have completely different settings. She likes it really hot. I like to get in the bed and it's cozy. It's warm, not hot, but just kind of, that's comfy. But then what happens is, and I set it initially, and then the sleep doctor kind of watches and adjusts it, is it gets cooler once you're in a deep sleep because it senses that. And it gets cooler, and it actually cools you down. If I were to wake up in the middle of that deep sleep, I would say, it's cool. Because it turns out biologically, I don't know why, there's some sort of reason, but I'm not clear what it is, but you do go deeper into your deep sleep as it cools off. I think because we grew up, we evolved in an environment where you might, put out the fire at night, get in bed, and then it gets cool overnight, right? But I have to say, we're not savages. So we're not animals. So when you got to get up, the 8 Sleep kind of goes, okay. And I have it set for like an alarm. It gets a little warmer. And you kind of go, oh, gosh, that feels good. Maybe you don't want to get out of bed, though. So don't get it too warm. Lisa did not want to get out of bed this morning. It's the best-in-class temperature regulation. It has sensors that track your health, your sleep metrics. You don't have to wear any wearable devices. You will know how much deep sleep you got, how much REM sleep you got, how long it took you to go to sleep. And I tell you what, if you're in Australia in the summer and it's hot this summer, you're going to love the 8 Sleep's cooling. And if you're in the northern hemisphere and it's cold because of winter, you're going to love the warmth. And that's the beauty of it. It does both. Better sleep. It's a health habit you'll love sticking to night after night. Wake up fully energized with a pod cover so you can tackle whatever life throws at you. 8 Sleep, EIGHT, You'll save $150 on the pod cover. We've had ours for a year now, more than a year. This is our second winter with it. I just love it. And when it was really hot this summer, man, I felt great. It saves you money in the long run because you don't have to heat the house. You don't have to cool the house. Just cool the bed. 8 Sleep currently ships in the U.S., yes, but also Canada, the U.K., select countries in the EU, and Australia. 8sleep.com/twit. Thank you, 8 Sleep. Thank you. We bought our 8 Sleep more before they were a sponsor because Kevin Rose told me about it. Then Amy Webb said, yeah, it's really great. So we bought it. And that's the one where I put it on wrong. They have very good videos that explain to you. I think it's not hard. I'm not going to read the manual. I can do this. It's obvious. No, well, just watch the little video and you go, oh yeah, it is obvious, but not like Leo thought. And I had to take it off, put it back on again. But now I love it. I love it. In fact, they did just send us the new Pod 3 and I haven't changed it because I'm just so happy. But eventually I'm gonna put on the new one. I'll tell you how the new one works. 8sleep.com/twit. I think Ant I saw an 8 Sleep in the office. I think Ant just got his. All right. Anything more to say about the surprise announcement this morning? What did you order, Jason? Oh, you didn't. You're gonna get review units.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to review some of this. Like, I want to see the MacBook Pro and I might be in a market for a Mac Mini. I have a Mac Mini server in my house. It's an Intel i3.
Oh, yeah.
I'm eyeing it. judgmentally as we speak. But whether I need more there, I think the biggest win there might be that it'll use a lot less power than the one that I've got running 24/7 now.
But your new dog's not going to like it because it's not as warm.
Yeah, but it's up like on a shelf in a closet where it does not affect.
See, that's why we have cats. They find the warmth no matter where it is.
Our cats haven't found it either. Like it's way too high up. They can't get there.
You can borrow ours if you really want to see a cat.
Oh, great.
Work to find heat. I guess we'll be buying a Mac Mini, John. Go ahead. Lisa, it's funny because Lisa 2 days ago, her M1 MacBook Air, the keyboard's been getting flaky. I've tried a bunch. I blew it out and did a bunch of stuff, and I said, you're going to have to bring it into Apple and have them replace it. And that was all it took. She said, well, I'll get a new M2 like you have. And then the next day, Apple surprised us. So I think she's going to get I think we're going to end up getting a 14-inch for Lisa. And she always wants the most power. she has no use for it. Don't forget, macOS, the Lustmaker.
Pivot tables.
Pivot tables. You know, she does do a lot of spreadsheeting. Yeah.
See, but I would never use a 14-inch with a spreadsheet unless you have a monitor, because that would be painful.
Yeah. So I don't know why she wants a laptop. She has those 49-inch monitors. They're all over the place. Anyway, what are you getting, Alex? What'd you get?
Yeah, I haven't ordered them yet because I've been in meetings all morning. But I'm gonna I'm gonna get probably 2 of the 16 gigs for myself. I'm building this kind of system at home where I can do editing and stuff like that, and not editing, but like cutting a bunch of live shows and kind of building this whole thing out. So I need 2 more. I was gonna get 2 M1s yesterday, and I waited.
Timing was good.
Because the problem with Apple, the Apple Store where I am, it's faster to order it than to go to the store. You know, so I almost got them. I lgoing would have ordered them at 3 and had them at 5. You know, from the Apple Store. So anyway, I'm glad I didn't do that. So I'm going to get a couple of them. I'm going to get one for my again. So I'll probably get 5 or 6 of them. Yeah, I'll probably buy 5 or 6 of them.
Do we care? Sizes. Somebody in the chat room saying.
But again, I just want to say that's like the price of one laptop. Like one pretty good setup laptop.
No, that's a good point.
6 different computers going 6 different directions, and so it is actually a cost thing for me. Is that I'm now going to buy ones that are doing things. I'm buying multiple computers. They're going to go to multiple people and a lot of other things. And otherwise, I'd be sucking them all up by paying for monitors that I just think laptops are. Unless you're really traveling, I don't think it makes sense. Because even with my Mac Studio, I bought a case for it, and now I just take it to the office. Like I don't even need a laptop to go to the office. I just have a monitor, and I just go down there and I set it down and plug everything in, and I don't even turn the computer off because then it actually restores itself better when you don't.
Is it a problem? Somebody in the chat room is complaining that Apple still doesn't support DisplayPort 2, which is 3x improvement in data rate and supports 16K video with 60 hertz and blah, blah, blah. But you don't use anything.
HDMI 2.1 is HDMI 2.1 will do all of those. It does
support that, right?
Yeah, it's like 8K. Yeah, I think it's a 2.1 connection, I believe. But I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure it's 2.1.
How
the Apple TV
this is the field you work in, you don't drive things with your Macs particularly, right? You just
what do you mean by drive things?
Well, I mean, like if you wanted 10K, you would. Well, maybe you would. Would you do it on a Mac?
No, you get specialized systems for that, and those are oftentimes PCs to do that.
Yeah.
So those, but you can. I mean, if you have multiple monitor outputs, you can use things like Resolume and other things that'll blend those all together. So you can definitely do it from a Mac. But you're using, when you're really doing like big screens, you're using things like Resolume or Disguise or other. There's big apps that do that thing. So
it doesn't say. I'm looking. It must somewhere say what HDMI version it supports. You could probably figure it out from the specs that it says.
I don't do a lot of. I mean, I have to admit that once it's to 4K, I don't really do a lot of monitor work that's over 4K because it's. To be honest with you, my eyesight isn't good enough. Like it doesn't make any difference. Like I'm not going to see it in my monitors that I'm working in. If I'm close enough and I have a large enough screen, 8K might make a difference, but it's got to be like, I mean, you got to remember that 8K matters when I'm at 85 inches at, 4 feet. After that,
or by the way, in
monitor.
VR displays, because you're inches away from it,
makes a big difference for that. I think that, and again, I think that we're going to see. I would be surprised I think we'll see at least 60 frame per second, 6K from the headsets. The upper end might be 120 by 8K per eye.
Right.
And that, so those kind of resolutions matter then. And I do think a lot of us have noticed that the Final Cut and Motion updates were very slow. Not much happened this year. One reason for that would be if you were building a bunch of stuff that can't be released yet. So with no information, I literally have no one there.
Our evil IRC is guessing, as I think we are, that the M2 change allows in the Pros allows HDMI 2.1. They do promote Wi-Fi 6E.
I do think so, yeah.
And that's chip based. So
yeah, so I think it is 2.1. I think I mean the Apple TV, the newest Apple TV has 2.1.
Yeah.
So and that should be 8K 60. I
That's
think.
pretty.
I don't
good.
think it's 8K 120, but I think it's 8K 60 and 4K 120.
Yeah, and there are a lot of 4K 120 displays, TVs. So it makes
not
sense.
a lot of content yet.
No,
yet,
unless you're playing video games.
Video games, you get the 120, but I think that it's interesting that the phones shoot 120. So it's 4K
good point.
Now, so.
Andy, have you been budgeting for anything? This is a surprise. I know.
I got the page in front of me, so I definitely got to go with Mac Mini with the M2 Pro because I want those 3 displays. In my budget, my budget is roughly more than $1,500, but definitely less than $2,000. And it's like I kind of feel like I got to have the 32 gigs of unified memory, so that's another $400. Bring me up to, it's like the old Wheel of Fortune. So I'm up to $1,699, and then we get to the question of, do we walk away with $300 in our pocket, or do we say, okay, give me 10 gigabit Ethernet, give me
don't get 10 gigabit Ethernet. No, you don't have that anywhere. Where are you going to use that?
Because I'm hoping to get like 5, 6, 7 years out of this, and if it turns out that like if in that time I upgrade my NAS to something with 10 gigs or other devices with 10 gigs, I'm kind of surprised that at this price point they don't just give you 10 gigabit Ethernet. That's kind of interesting to me. And
you're always going to get at least a terabyte. I wish we have to get Alan Maventano or somebody to test and see where the jump in performance is. We know that at least on the laptops, the slow 512 gig drive is slower than the bigger one. And you think, Alex, is maybe 2 terabytes to the cutoff?
I think it's in the past is 1 terabyte. Once you got to 1 terabyte, it was a faster drive.
That was the big jump. Yeah.
I mean, my problem is that like I feel I can justify the idea that, hey, look, I can always buy like an external drive for extra storage. I'll use 512. I'll use the 512 internal for the important apps that I got to launch. And if I've got a document that is or video that really is that important, I'll save partitions. I'll save space for that. I can't upgrade memory, and there might be a time where I'm going to wish I had 32 instead of 16.
Is there any argument, Alex, for getting the 12-core CPU versus the 10 and the 19-core GPU versus the 16? That's a $300 jump, and it seems like it can't possibly be that big a jump in performance.
It depends on it depends on the application you're using, and it depends on how optimized that application is being written to the hardware. Because that's the big thing that right now is that the big performance stoppage is a lot of times the developers not developing, especially if they're developing. I mean, if they're developing a word processor, it doesn't really matter. But if they're developing audio, video, music, synthesizers, that type of thing, those kind of processors matter if they're taking advantage of it. And so a lot of those are going to be what we're going to see more and more of, I think, also is less. The ones that are taking the most advantage of it are going to be either really big development teams or Mac only teams.
It might
that
be
are not
worth
really
going
trying to go both directions.
To the M2 Pro on the Mini, though, because you get double the memory bandwidth, which I imagine makes a difference in performance.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Yeah. It's unified memory. So are we happy with 16 gigs? Do we want to go to 32 gigs? Again, I guess that just depends on your use case.
For the little glue ones that I'm getting from my office, I'm just getting the 8 gigs. I don't need.
That's always blows me away because 8 feels like, gosh, that seems like 1999.
Apple themselves says that on the buying page that if you're 16 is great for at least on the M2 Pro. If you're doing normal stuff, 16 will do you fine. 32 gigs is desirable if you're editing 4K video.
Yeah, I'm not editing with the ones I'm getting, so and we've already tested it. Like with the Zoom stuff that we do a lot of, the 8 gigs was just fine.
Yeah,
didn't bother.
And of course, as we've said before, you cannot upgrade either the memory or the storage on these.
Right.
So get what you need, because that's what you're going to have for the life of the machine. Yep. You can do external storage, but you can't. Memory is memory. You're not going to be able to do anything. And external storage is not as fast as the internal. You said that's really important. You said it many times, Alex, but I really want to reiterate that even with Thunderbolt 4, your external storage is not as fast as these fastest internal drives.
But what we don't know is if all of these at every level of the Mac Minis are what is the speed of those SSDs? Are they so on the Pro side of it, I'm going to bet that is the same drive speed as we see in the studio. In the base units, I would be surprised if it was. Yeah. Like I think it'll probably be. So I think your external drive would be just as fast, because I think it just won't have that.
That's what it was on the laptop, and there were some complaints about that when you got 512 gigs.
Right.
You got a slower SSD.
Yeah.
So all right, good buying advice. Thank you. And you know what is great? These are people who put their money where their mouth is. These are not people who are, just saying, spend the money, spend the money. They're putting their own money out too. Yeah.
Good Lord, yes.
Good Lord, am I putting out the money? But just remember, macOS, the Lustmaker.
And one thing that I am doing, because I have a lot of shared libraries over NAS, is I'm getting the 10 gig Ethernet connection.
Yeah, that's what Andy was saying. Someday make it a Synology with a 10 GBE. Then you internally, of course, you'd have to wire your whole house with Cat 6.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the challenge. I have a giant spool over here for that very reason. And it's like eventually, I guess I got to do something with that spool. But it's it's either that or I set up a museum where there's a room that with oversized objects in it, and I say that it's thread, because that's what it looks like. It's literally like a big.
I'm going to be knitting a 6 gigabit quilt.
I got to find a big needle. Is the problem.
I'm just going to put. I have to rewire it this year finally, and I have wiring. Fortunately, there's wiring in the house, so it just matter where you pull it. I was like, if I'm going to go through all this trouble and get all that,
you have
stuff
conduit
in my hair
in the house, so it won't be hard.
But if I'm going to pull all that stuff through, I'm going to just put Tac 12 in. Call it a day.
I just drill holes in the outside of my house, Leo. That's what I have to do. I have no other method. Is to staple it and then drill a hole and run it inside. It's great. Good stuff. 1950s construction.
You might as well get that Ethernet cable with LEDs built in, and then you can just have permanent Christmas lights. It'd be great.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love it. Power over Ethernet lights.
I just made that product up. I don't know if it exists. It should. It should.
We're just checking. Just in. Now it does exist. It just happened.
I say embrace the Ethernet. Might as well.
You talk about the efficiencies of Chinese manufacturing. They stole it even before you had the sentence completed.
Had a thought and boom. I'll have to look, and we just remember a couple of years ago, we put in Ethernet everywhere. And I hope we put in at least Cat 6. What do I need for 10 gigabit? Cat 6 or 6E? What do I need?
Well, and I don't know if you need for the whole house. I mean, my whole thing is that I'm going to probably have a server
next to your stuff.
They'll all be looking at it next to each other, so I don't have to run it that far.
I can't.
6, I think, is what you need for 10 gigs.
6? Yeah. Okay. Depends on the length. Let's say it's 100 feet. 6E?
I wouldn't put any less than 6E, but again, if you're doing it very long, I'm just going to put fiber in.
I can't remember what we put in.
SFPs.
Yeah. I probably thought to myself, I don't need 10 gigabits. No one would ever need 10 gigabits.
It's SFPs. That's all you need.
How many of these 5 megapixel JPEGs am I going to be sending from one place to another? For heaven's sake.
Exactly. All right.
My Apple QuickTake camera only shoots at 160 by 120. For heaven's sake, stop trying to upsell me.
Those were the worst. Remember how bad that was? Maybe it was 320. It was 320 by 160.
Oh, you mean the QuickTake?
The QuickTake.
Yeah.
Was it
240? I had the Panasonic kit that came out in 1997, and it was, I think, 1600 by 1200. I have a lot of photos that I wish were bigger now.
Oh, gosh. That wasn't the one you saved to floppy disk, was it?
No. It had I think you just had to plug the camera in. I don't think it had an external way to pull the camera stuff off of it. It was it looked like a little spaceship. It was kind of cool.
There's a Cat
Sony
12. Is there really a Cat 12? No.
No, there's just called fiber.
That's the audiophile. That's the audiophile standard.
Cat 12. Yes, it's gold. It's made out of
My whole thing is
gold.
I just never want to do it again. So I was like, if I just pull Cat 12 between everything, then
that's why you put conduit in, because you could,
it's not. I don't have conduit. It's just snaked through. Someone already did it, so there's holes. And I can. But the good thing is I can now attach that to the one that's already there and pull it through. That's the key. Is that and Jason's like, no, you can't do that.
I mean, no, you can. That's it's just, you said holes, and I'm like, oh, so much for conduit, isn't it, Alex? It's just,
I don't think there's
I have a hole with a wire, and if I tape other wires to it, I can pull them through, and that's basically a conduit.
It's close.
Meanwhile, I'll be out on my ladder,
we just ran fiber. We just ran fiber down to the pit, and it was like, it was nice because we could lift up the floor tiles because it's a big production facility. But still, when we lifted them up, we were like, no one has lifted these up for a very long time.
The pit, we should explain, is a basement sound studio that he does the podcasts in and other stuff. It's in the building that used to be the
ILM main stage.
The ILM main stage.
And the pit is now leased by John McDermott, who's the guitarist for Stroke 9. If you remember that band.
He had a bunch of gold records down there and some guitars.
Yeah. So, we've been slowly building it up, but we opened up the floor, and there was a lot of rats had been down there. A lot of random spilled drinks and other things.
Paraphernalia?
No paraphernalia. But we didn't know. We thought we might find some kind of bodies down there, but not human bodies, but just things. Unfortunately,
I'm just saying. If it was a musician with any credibility, like you could vacuum and then that HEPA filter you could have made enough money back to another place.
The funny thing is once you're in the pit, it's the cleanest it's ever been. You see the pictures in Light and Magic. I mean, John keeps it like pristine. So it's pristine once you go in there. It's like it's perfect.
What did they use it for? It was like a dubbing booth?
Well, it originally was used. I think it was originally used as a Foley pit. So the guys
you got
took
sand
it over.
and you got mud and you got plaster and
then the guys moved in, and then Spaz, Steve Williams and moved in there, and that's where they did the first walking cycles for the T-Rex and everything.
That was
else.
In the pit?
That was in the pit. Yeah, that was the very first T-Rex.
That was their office, was the pit? Because and you recommended that on the Disney Plus they have that great documentary about ILM, and they talk about this because this was for Jurassic Park. They were still using practical effects, and little stop action dinosaurs, and the guy's nickname is Spaz, as politically incorrect as it is. And Wilson said, we think we could do it. I don't know who the other guy was. Anyway, that we could do it in a computer because it was the very early days of computer graphics. So they just on their own time animated a T-Rex, and then said to Spielberg, "Come here."
Well,
actually, it was
the story
George,
is
I think, right.
The story is that there were still that you weren't supposed to do that. Like you weren't supposed to do the CG. They had already had a plan. They had a way to do this.
They had a guy building a giant T-Rex stop action model.
The story I heard was that Steve just left it running on his monitor when Steven Spielberg came down. Like he didn't say anything about it. There was no proposal. It's not told that way in the documentary.
That makes sense.
What I heard was that he just left it there running.
The other guy, Dennis Muren.
And Spielberg looked at it and just was like, "What is that?" The rumor is that a lot of folks at ILM were not happy because it was not.
Chiefly
it was not
George.
A plan.
George could be.
Chiefly, I think Dennis. Dennis was not super excited about it. He got an Academy Award for it, but he wasn't. I don't think he was very happy at the moment because it. Looking back now, as someone who runs a company, it was definitely not a. He created a whole new set of variables that no one knew how to solve.
Yep. Very interesting. Anyway. Very, very. It's well worth seeing.
Fiber. It's all about fiber.
Steve Spaz Williams and his partner, who will remain nameless forever.
Mark DePay, I think.
Mark? That sounds right. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Anyway, it's worth watching the documentary for the clean version of what really happened. Now you know the truth.
The corporate approved version of history.
Yeah. So there is some other news. Is there anything else about this announcement that we wanted to talk about? I don't want to leave anything undone. Mark Dippy.
I think it's to pay, but
Dippy.
maybe
Mark
Dippy.
Dippy. It is Dippy, but he calls himself Dippy. No, I'm just
It's got an umlaut over
Hey,
it.
residents, engineer of the house speaking. Sorry.
The Dippy's here. All right, nothing else. Going, gone. Digital ID on phones, perhaps, coming to California. The governor didn't mention Apple, though, which was weird. During his budget speech, Governor Gavin Newsom said in a matter of months, we're finally going to have those digital wallets. Okay, Gavin, you sound like an old guy. We're going to have those, those digital wallet doohickeys where you can get your driver's license on a digital wallet. We're going to do it like no other state has done it. Well, other states have used Apple. There's only a few that have, but there's issues. Ours, we think, he's starting to sound like Donald Trump. They're going to be great. We think it'll be next level. We're so excited about what the DMV can look like. Obviously ad-libbing here. But I wonder, Apple did not mention California when they mentioned the states that have committed to use digital IDs in Apple Wallet.
Sure sounds like he got a briefing a couple weeks ago, and then somebody mentioned, he's like, oh, yeah, we got that thing.
Dimly
we got that thing with the ID.
We're going to do that thing.
On them computers?
Other states have done it, but we're not going to do it like they've done it. Well, maybe a few have done it. Anyway.
We'll do better, though. It'll be awesome.
It's going to be great.
The kids in the DMV tell me it'll be great.
You know, like when you go to the store and you can just run the thing over the thing and it goes beep and you get charged. It'll be like that, only 5 times better.
Bada bing, bada bang, and then you are on an airplane.
Yeah.
I just hope this is unfortunately, like, the federal government hasn't given state IDs are, as the name implies, controlled by the states. There's no federal legislation that says that here's what a state ID has to do, as far as I know. Last time I looked into it was a few years ago. But this is one of the things where you absolutely want the dumbest solution available. You don't want the most innovative. You don't want the most incredible and slick and whatever. You want something so that if someone has a really cheap, free with a 1-year data commitment phone, that it will work on that phone, because you can't have features. You can't have this be only easy for people who can afford an Apple phone or even a Samsung phone. It has to be something that works for everybody.
1 week ago, Mark Gurman said Apple is working on adding touchscreens to its Mac computers. But it won't be, don't get your hopes up. It's not going to be today. It's not going to be next year. It's going to be in 2025 as part of a larger update to the MacBook Pro, according to the people who asked not to be identified because the plans are private.
Yeah, but I'm glad that if this is true, I'm glad that Apple's breaking what is currently a serious dogma. It's not, I don't think that they seriously think about how the Mac could be enhanced with screen displays. I don't think they've done what they've historically done, which is look at what has been done with touch screen displays on Windows and looked at what works and what doesn't work and put their own spin on it. I do think that they've been trapped by dogma, saying that our touch screen operating system is iPad OS for large screens. Mac OS is not a touchscreen OS. When we have seen how really, really wonderful touchscreen on a large screen can actually be. And we were just talking I was just saying last week that if Apple ever came out with an iPad, a Macintosh and an iPad Pro form factor, oh my God, would I be first in line to buy something like that? Because all the advantages of this tiny little thin thing that has a clip-on typable keyboard with the ability to simply freestyle it on the sofa and still be able to run Mac full desktop apps instead of having to deal with what you got to deal with when you're running iPad OS. Oh my God, I'd be so quick in line for that.
I suppose it'd be nice to have the choice, but I do notice that like this desktop has touch, but I never use it. And it's that gorilla arm thing, as Mike Sargent calls it, where you
well, I mean, yeah, I think that's really short-sighted. No pun intended. Because the idea is that, oh well, it doesn't work because I'm not going to be taking my hands off the keyboard to do a touch. Taking my hands off the keyboard to do a touch. Let's not forget that we're not that far away from when Apple said, "Hey, take your hands off the keyboard to look at this little touch bar, to hit this little touch bar above the keyboard." And also, it's not necessarily if I have a trackpad between my hands, I'm going to be using it. If I got a mouse under my hand, I'm going to be using it. What it's good for is when you are literally just trying to scroll. There are times, even when I'm using my iPad, when I switch to the iPad, my MacBook, and I will just almost reflexively reach in to scroll, pinch, and zoom, because that's the way that I interact with screens these days. I would at least like to see Apple look at what a Mac can be with a touchscreen. I think they would come up with something that would really bring things forward and make me less jealous at times when I look at exciting form factors in the Windows space of laptops.
Right. There are two paths for them here, right? There is this conservative path, which I agree about. I mean, Gorilla Arms is about spending all day with your arms extended, touching a screen that's perpendicular to your keyboard. And like, yeah, okay, of course not. But using one of those laptops, it's all second nature to literally everybody now, that you see a dialog box on screen and you want to tap it closed, or you want to just move a finger on the screen and flick it to flick up the web browser. And that is not a Gorilla Arms gesture. It's a very simple gesture. And they're not going to take the trackpad away. It's just an additional input method. That's a very conservative path for Apple to walk, but I feel like they could walk it. And, you know, every year that passes, there are more people out there who think of touch as being something that should be on every single screen in existence. The other path is what Andy says, which is if you've got a touch screen, you can, like, Apple hasn't made a new looking MacBook for 12, 13 years. Yeah. And I think they've kind of perfected the perpendicular laptop thing, but on the Windows side with touch, you end up with this scenario where it's like, well, what if I folded the keyboard back? Yeah. Or what if I detached the keyboard? And Apple has not ever been able to play in that space on the Mac, only on the iPad, because of the lack of touch. And I don't know whether they will choose to go down that path, but boy, I also would be very interested in seeing what would happen if Apple said, what if we had a macOS laptop that you could pull the keyboard off of and use with Apple Pencil and Touch? That would be really interesting.
I just wonder when the iPad just runs macOS. You know, like they're coming so close together. You know, and the thing is, now that we have Resolve running on the iPad, and you can hack it so that it opens up the other windows that aren't released yet. It's obvious that these two things developing for both of these starts to come together. So maybe they have the Mac do that, but maybe you just have something that's a little bit more beefy than the iPad Pro that is otherwise, you know, run something. I just feel like the two of them are coming together very, very close together now. You know,
there are a lot of people who use Macs as drawing tablets with a Cintiq screen attached to it, and so the idea of having that, well, no, don't buy this external display that kind of puts some distance between you and the content. Here is a 16-inch or even an 18-inch or 20-inch Mac that will work with Apple Pencil. A lot of creatives, video editing, even video editors, but certainly artists, designers would absolutely go in for that.
Well, and I think that when you do that, though, to the point that was made earlier is that you want to get rid of the keyboard. So if you want to start drawing, you want to pull that off. Sure. And have it be something that you're drawing on. The keyboard is part of what makes the quote-unquote Gorilla Arms is reaching over this keyboard. So I think that if Apple goes to a point where a MacBook does that, it just feels like it's just a bigger iPad at some point, you know, like that gives you the Mac OS running on it. It's detachable. You have a detachable keyboard that you can draw on and do all the other things. And that would be amazing. Like it would be really cool.
I think I'm with Basenet, but I think they could figure some things out. And I mean, as we're discussing this, I could think about all the times when the original Mac was kind of dismissed that, hey, people don't want to take their hands off the keyboard to keep touching this mouse thing off the side, and say, well, imagine a world in which apps are designed for the mouse and designed to be used that way. Think about all the times when all you're doing is you're scrolling anyway, or using the page up, page down keys on the keyboard anyway. Couldn't that be easier? So these are questions that are being answered really, really well on Chrome OS and on Windows. I would love to see, again, Apple investigate that on the Mac, because I think they could do some really great stuff.
And my question isn't actually, Alex said, you know, what about the iPad? I actually start to think about it from the other direction, which is, what about the Mac? Like the iPad Pro, not the base level iPad that is used so commonly, but that iPad Pro that Apple, and I love the iPad Pro, but like Apple has invested so much time, so many resources in making a more Finder-like Files app and inventing a pointer, which is a great pointer, and trying to do like Driver Kit, and they built the Magic Keyboard to give it a keyboard and a trackpad. They've done all this stuff to sort of make it like a laptop, but they can never quite get there because it's hard for something that was built around being all touch and originally being an iPhone to do that. And I wonder at some point if you might not say, what if we approach this from the Mac side? And what if all the work we've done on the iPad allows us to create a better tablet mode on macOS that runs iPad apps and Mac apps or whatever? And not to say this is easy. This is all really hard stuff that would take years. But I wonder, there's a possibility at least that inside Apple, they've looked at this and said, maybe we went around about this from the wrong direction.
Or maybe they started thinking about it.
That's what
15 years ago.
saying, maybe. But I mean, he says it's not going to be out for 2 years. I think he's kind of saying that glacial movement towards that has produced a product, but it's going to take a while. You think they've been doing it for 15 years, Alex?
Maybe 10.
Really?
At least 10.
You think people internally have been looking at it? And was it the executives? Was it Steve Jobs who kept it from happening?
I don't think anyone's kept it from happening. I think merging the two operating systems is really complicated.
Oh, you're talking about merging, not touch on macOS, but you're talking about merging.
I'm saying that having the two of them coming together, not to be maybe one OS, but you now have a unified hardware infrastructure. You have a unified. I mean, there's a lot.
We've certainly moved a long way.
A lot of things that took a long time.
Yeah.
You know, to
that M2 Air and the M2 iPad Pro are basically the same. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet one of them runs one OS and one runs the other, and they have some apps in common. And let's not forget the opportunity cost sort of that's lost here, which is if you say artificially the Mac can never be anything but a standard laptop and all other things must be handled by the iPad. I mean, why? Why does it have to be that way? But they have steadfastly up to now said that has to be the case. And as much as I like the iPad, you can't deny the fact that they have tried so hard to make it like the Mac, and that there's probably somebody on the other side saying, or what if it was the Mac and had a simplified iPad mode for certain circumstances instead of trying to shove all of this stuff into iPad OS where maybe it's just not a great fit?
Well, and I think that the other thing is that I don't think that the macOS is going away, but I think that to Jason's point, that we just get to a point where we want to run Mac apps, on the iPad and just go full screen and do what we're going to do, because we're already running the iPad apps on the Mac, and we do that all the time. Like Mix Effect Pro, which is something we use a lot, is we just run them on Mac Minis because it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to sit in a server than an iPad is, and so and running iPad apps on a Mac went from, this is really cool, to I can't believe you're not doing it. Like you immediately like, oh. And then when you start looking at Resolve, I think Resolve is the first real app that you go, oh, like that's a real hard to do Mac app that is running on a iPad, and I think that is, I just think that we're one or two iPads away from you just being able to switch the iPad mode to Mac OS or
MacBooks away, right? Because it might not be an iPad, because I think there are going to be iPads that aren't Macs for a long time, if not forever, because I think it is a successful product at the lower end. But at that high end, like, start to think about it. It's not even it's a Mac that can have an iPad mode, not an iPad that runs Mac OS. But they're all the same.
Remember what happened when Microsoft did that to Windows 8.1, and it was a disaster where they had and they still do, by the way, but they've hidden it deep within Windows, have a tablet mode. It really,
but they did it a lot faster. They did it a lot faster than Apple's doing.
I mean, I think the people at Apple probably looked over the hedge there and said, well, we got to be careful not to do that to ourselves.
Yeah. But to their credit, they did bounce back really well with Windows 10 and Windows 11. Yeah. It switches. I think that Windows 10 and 11, and also actually Android, does a really good job of explaining how you can design a unified interface that makes as much sense with touch pen and with trackpad as
so maybe that's been solved
as any other. And I think that I think that one of the things that made me really happy to see, they think he's predicting it 2 years out. It would imply for me that it will accompany and also an overhaul to the Macintosh user interface, so that not to make it dumber and more iPad-like, but to give it some of the qualities that those other two operating systems have, where you don't really notice necessarily that the buttons you're clicking on with the trackpad and the mouse and the handles for moving windows around are all that different. But once you switch into touch mode, you notice that, wow, those touch targets are a lot easier to get to. The low layer interface that tries to figure out what you're trying to tap with a mouse becomes a lot more complicated, because now it has to figure out how you're going to hit a target with a much more blunt instrument, so to speak. So I think that while I'm not really a fan of the whole, at one point these two operating systems are going to become one thing, I do believe that, as it's been doing for the past 5 or 6 or 7 years, they're all going to continue to grow from each other, so that someone who is switching from one to another over the course of the workday will feel as though they're having one seamless experience.
I maybe not as convinced as y'all are. I'm surprised, actually. I know I must touch my screen because I have fingerprints on my MacBook, but it's unconscious. I feel like what Apple's doing, which is interesting, is moving the apps from the iPad and iPhone to the desktop without just making the operating systems compatible is probably 90% of it, isn't it? If you can get the iOS apps on your desktop, I guess you still need touch for some of them. And
well, aren't we already kind of seeing that with the ability to have my iPad Pro right next to my MacBook screen, just simply roll my pointer off of one screen and onto the other, and not really be aware that now I'm in not screen mirroring mode or screen extension mode, but I'm actually running iPad OS off of the same keyboard and mouse.
I wonder what their plan is. I really do. Anyway, it's an interesting data point for Mark Gurman, and I think something worth talking about. Real quickly, just a couple more stories to get through before we get to your picks of the week. A couple of App Store stories. There was an app that looked just like the iPod. It was called Retropod. And then it got successful. It went viral on TikTok, so Apple yanked it. They didn't say why they've yanked it, nor have the developers say why they yanked it. But at least 9 to 5 Mac thinks it's because, well, it turns the iPhone into an iPod, and who would want that?
Well, once Apple starts saying that it's okay to mimic an actual authentic Apple product, that opens the floodgates to a lot of bad things. So I could see why they're being.
It's not the first time there was another app called Rewound. The same thing happened, and Apple yanked it. This Apple can't do anything about. There is a Bootrom exploit for the iPod Nano. Ooh, 3rd gen to 5th gen. 10 years too late, says the headline. But I do recommend the article. I do recommend the article because it's a very interesting article about how you would find an exploit, how you would reverse engineer the iPod tech stack, and also a lot of information about the iPod tech stack. Everything's encrypted and signed. The bootloader is signed, and it tries not to load something that's malicious and so forth. So it's really interesting to read how the author of this article figured it all out, because he really wanted, for some reason, to reverse engineer a 3rd generation, 4th generation, 5th generation iPod Nano. Of course, if you like this kind of thing, I guess somehow he was able to get a dump of the, I guess he disassembled it, a dump of the code. And I love this part of the piece. As you're looking at the code, he says, "Well, do you see that? You see that right there? That's the bug." So if you feel, can you see it? The bug is right there. If BM request type and 3 equals 0, the user-controlled index populated from the lower byte of the W-index field of the setup packet is used as an index, into G-state USB handlers without any boundary checks, children. And you know what that means. Jumping, Josaphat. I love it. I love reading articles like this. That's it. The bug's right there. Can you see it? So, but it's fascinating. If you want to know how this kind of stuff happens, how and the kind of work it takes, and it's kind of cool. It's like code breaking, especially since it's an old device nobody cares about anyway. It makes it more fun.
These people they're like Columbo. It's like there's this thing that just bugs me, and it's going to keep on. They're going to keep on it until it stops bugging them, and there's nothing silly about it. It's heroic. It's very, very human to say that if this thing that's designed to keep me out, I believe that there's a way that I can get into that. That's
Surge,
really, and now we're a step closer to seeing it running Doom, which is always the goal, isn't it?
Or Linux. Credit to Serge Bazansky, who wrote the article. His blog is q3k.org. He says, you want to be part of the useless old device 0 days scene? Apply within. I love it. This is really cool. That's my kind of hacking.
That is amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
That's like the people who found a bug in Apple II Pro DOS and released a new version of Pro DOS in like 2020, 2019.
Wow.
And you boot up on the Apple II and it says 2019. You go, what? But I love it. It's like we're fixing bugs from 1989 and we're hacking iPods from 2009. I love retro tech is the best.
It's nice, yeah, because it's a very benign kind of hacking. I mean, you're not gonna. There's no exploit coming out of this. It's just fun. It's interesting.
Wasn't there an Apple II game that only recently finally had its copy protection cracked? And when the person finally cracked it, they found a hidden message from the developer saying, "Okay, well, I guess you finally got in." So as a reward, here's a secret code for like an upcoming game, to get. And nobody's figured out what that upcoming game is supposed to be.
And there are several new Apple II games that have been released in the last 5 years where people have written. It's just, I love it. It's so great. I think somebody did a new Atari 2600 game too. Like people, that's the next level is you're not just emulating old systems. You're writing new software for old systems. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The best.
Yep.
Goldman Sachs says, you know that darn Apple Card thing? It cost us $1 billion. How do you lose money doing a credit card? Goldman Sachs has found new ways to lose money.
You work with a company that is super specific about how they want it to work and are inflexible. And so I think that you have to be always careful about working. The thing with Apple is that, man, they pay attention to details. And so you'll look at something and think about how it would be done in the real world, and then you enter the Apple world and they're like, well, we don't want it to be that way, and we want it to be this easy, and we want this interface, and we want this little edge on this little corner to be this way, and it has to be that way or we can't release it, and we want how the customer is told what to do has to be a very specific way, and that all of that starts to add up. so it's
and sometimes you find out that like the reason why Apple is we're sticklers on design and making it right and the best user experience, and we don't understand, we think it's terrible that these other companies haven't been doing it thus far, and then sometimes you find out, well, the reason why we haven't been doing it that way is because we go out of business in about 11 weeks if we did it exactly the way you want to do it. It's not quite as dire with this story, but it does show like when you take your own business model and you try to adapt processes that are absolutely alien and new. Sometimes it is because, again, that word dogma. Sometimes it's because of fear. And sometimes it really is because there's really is a third rail. There's a way to navigate around it, but you got to be really careful around it.
I guess we're going to have to amend our recommendation for an Apple TV. Do not buy an Apple TV if you don't have other Apple devices, particularly an iPhone. Somebody discovered this in the new Apple TV, OS. You have to have an iPhone in order to accept the new iCloud terms and conditions. It says, update with iPhone, new clouds and conditions accepted on a device running iOS 16 or later. I don't know if there's a workaround yet. This is fairly new information. Came from a guy tweeting, Hugelgupf. Hugelgupf says, I own an Apple TV. I own not a single other Apple device, not one. Every time I start the Apple TV, I get this prompt now. Apple, what do you expect me to do about this? That would be annoying.
We'd love to see you buy an iPhone. That would be ask Tim Cook.
There's the solution.
His standard response.
Yes. That's weird. I don't know.
Just a bug, though.
Maybe it's a bug. Yep. Maybe they'll fix it. Because I'm sure they want to sell Apple TVs to as many people as want to buy them.
Yep. I think it's a pretty it's a fairly uncommon thing to see someone do, is to not have any other Mac and get an Apple TV. It probably is a bug, but it probably is because no one did it before.
Yeah.
It's a pretty rare, because most people who are using the Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus that don't have that are using it. That's the one that's shipped in the
built into the TV
and built into the TVs. Yeah. So it's a very interesting behavior to do that. I
want to pass along a consumer tip from The Verge. Sheena Vasani, no, you cannot get a 16 terabyte SSD for $100. In case you were wondering, apparently they're being advertised on Amazon. Josh Henderson, the editor-in-chief of Review Geek, bought one of these, tore it down, found out inside 64 gigabit gigabyte micro SD card and a USB 2.0 card reader. Adrian Kingsley Hughes in ZDNet, same thing. The Verge has confirmed there are several of these on the first page of results for external SSD. Do not be tempted. A 16 terabyte external SSD should cost you much more than $100, like maybe a couple of thousand. So, although the prices are dropping, I can see how people be fooled by this, right? Because, hey, wow, the prices really have dropped. $100?
Yeah.
What a deal.
You're just paying for Samsung marketing, that's all.
Yeah, right.
It seems to be like $100 is the thing. There was a Stream Deck, that went out, and suddenly it was $100 for a day or 2 days or something like that. And a bunch of us bought it knowing that probably, I don't know if this is really going to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still haven't received it. It's still sitting there, and I mostly wanted to see what would happen. And you get into this, the scammers got you into this thing where they said it's shipping. So it's in this state that Amazon doesn't know what to do with.
Yeah.
And so they kind of sit in between. But generally, if something is way cheaper than it should be, it probably is not.
Did you see my cute little teeny weeny Stream Deck that I got?
I know, I have one of those. Those are great. Those are great for
button.
PowerPoint. Or not PowerPoint, but Keynote.
That's how it starts. That's how it starts.
It starts with a little one, and then you get
I started
bigger,
with one of
pretty
those.
soon you got knobs and
No. Now your kitty can stream.
This actually John made for me. Did you buy it just for this, or did we have one lying around? Oh, well, we should buy you a replacement. So I can actually switch. I can now switch shots. I can switch to the wide shot just in case I want to. Like, it give me the illusion of control is what this is all about. Oh, don't go. Don't leave, John Ashley. Stay here. I need you.
It just turns on the light in the bathroom, Leo. Bad news.
It doesn't do anything. Dropbox has announced they are going to finally support macOS 12.5 and later. It all happened when kernel extensions were yanked. They didn't. And you know what? You had plenty of time, Dropbox, but OneDrive got bit by it too. Dropbox says you can expect, if you are a Dropbox user, you can expect to receive an update between now and the end of May. You can also join the beta if you want. Basic Plus Professional and Family Plan customers, just turn on early releases and watch for a notification. So I'm using it. I don't know how I'm using it without. I think I use Dropbox. I'm pretty sure I use it on a Mac. I guess it's just not native. Is that the issue? I don't know. Let's take a break. When we come back, you are going to pick some stuff, fellas. Pick of the week time coming up next. But first, let me tell you my pick for hiring. Our sponsor, ZipRecruiter. It happens a lot in any business. Businesses are made of people. Like Soylent Green, it's made of people. And the success of your business or the failure of business really depends on the people working in the business. This is a tough time right now because you're building new goals for 2023. Maybe you've got some new openings. Maybe you've lost some people over the holidays. Finding qualified candidates, or this is tough nowadays, adjusting to candidates' work preferences. All hiring challenges we all face, but there's one place you can go to hire the perfect person fast. ZipRecruiter. And you can try it for free right now. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. We use it when we need somebody fast. Lisa will go right to ZipRecruiter because you post immediately to more than 100 job sites and social networks, so you're getting the word out. ZipRecruiter makes it easy to screen inbound candidates, too, because they reformat the resumes. They make sure that those emails don't go to your inbox or your phone calls go to your voicemail. They all go into the ZipRecruiter interface, which makes it very easy to rank them, screen them, rank them, and hire the right person fast. You can have screening questions, multiple choice, yes, no, even essay questions. And then here's something really cool. ZipRecruiter uses its own powerful matching technology to help you find the right candidates for the job. If you see a candidate who'd be a perfect fit, ZipRecruiter makes it easy to send them a personal invitation so they're more likely to apply. That makes a big difference. ZipRecruiter also offers attention-grabbing labels you can put on your postings. We're going to start using this, like remote training provided or remote okay, that kind of thing, because frankly, employees these days are kind of in the driver's seat. They have their needs, their wants. And if you want a great employee, you better let them know you can help. ZipRecruiter's user interface is the best too. Easy to filter, review, and rate your candidates all from one place. Let ZipRecruiter help you find the best people for all those roles you want to fill in 2023. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. We usually get it even faster, like in hours. It's amazing. See for yourself. Go to ZipRecruiter to try it for free. It's got to use this site, though, okay? So they know you saw it here. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak, MacBreak. You know, the show, the name of ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And we love these guys. They've been very, very helpful for us when we are down a person. Alex, Lindsay, I rarely start with you because I know how expensive your picks of the week are, but this time it's inexpensive.
Inexpensive. It's just a little something that I have to admit I had not researched in the past, and I finally came to the end of something, and when of course I told Kevin in our office, he was like, "Yeah, we have like 5 of those." Like
they already knew
that we didn't have them, so I just want to make sure no one else is embarrassed by the situation. So I have a thing about mics that I hate mic threading. So I hate the fact that they made it really fine. It's like a skill test when you do the mics. You screw it on, and if you get it wrong, you're going to strip that. The mic threading out, which drives me crazy, and I have to put mics on a lot. And I found it to be frustrating. And I found these. I bought a couple different ones, and I found the one that I like the most is made by Gator Frameworks, and all it is a quick release that just pulls out.
Oh, we need those.
It's a little. So you don't
have to screw the mic stand.
You can buy these
stand.
Separately.
Yeah,
you do lots of these things for your mics. So you put them all into the mics once, right? And then you have this you put on your stand, and all you have to do is pull it down and let it go. And it now is locked in, and there's no more wrapping it around. And it's $25 for the set. You can, of course, buy these in sets of 3. You can buy these little mic inserts for a lot. And I just start putting them on everything. Like I'm just going to put these on everything, so I never have to add to screw
John,
in a
would
mic
you rather
again.
have this than a new Mac Mini? No.
They're not as expensive. You could probably get both.
No, he says we don't need him.
He doesn't need them.
He's good at
there you go.
screwing. He doesn't
I don't.
ever strip. It's not the mic, it's the mic holder. He's going to bring in.
Well, I don't do it to the mics. I do it to the mic holders.
Yeah. The mic holders. That's the
But
point.
But
we never
I'm
take
always
them
putting them on
off.
different. See, I put them on different arms, and we put them together, and so and I of course I was really excited about it, and I told somebody that does like live events, and they're looking at that's what we use for.
John's mad at me because I would dare to suggest we'd get this instead of a Mac Mini. No, we're going to get you your Mac Mini. Don't worry. But this looks good. Great Gator Frameworks microphone quick release stand attachment on Amazon. $24 for one, but get a 5-pack. It's only $42.29.
Yeah. So if it's an AV, it's an AV pick. It's but it is
and then you got
that's
these.
So you can put them all in.
Yeah. Got it.
So. It just makes life a lot easier. I have a lot of mics and a lot of stands, and when you're going between them all, it's nice. That's all I can say.
Get 3 for the price of 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Andy Ihnatko, what's your pick of the week here?
Mine is a very esoteric text editor. We've talked so many times about how many other people on this panel love BB Edit, because how many of us have a use for a plain text editor without any formatting? Just give me text. Let me save it as a text file. I found a text editor finally for iOS and for my iPad that kind of fits the bill. It's called Runestone by Simon Stovring. And it is exactly what you would want if you are into this kind of a text editor. It is just a plain text editor, but with a very, very good iPad OS interface. And you could tell that it was a developer who wrote this to solve problems.
It looks
on
just
an
like
iPad
my
because,
Emacs interface.
Yeah, no, exactly. You launch it, you launch it, and you get the first time I launched it, I got a little bit confused because I didn't see here's a blank document. It basically opens into the Files app to give you a picker, because it assumes that you're going to want to edit some code or edit a file that you've put on the iPad somewhere. Of course, you can create new documents, but that's where you start with. And the fact that it lets you determine what kind of text file do you want to create. Like, is it going to be Unix line breaks? Is it going to be Mac line breaks? For free, it's a basic text editor for the paltry sum of $10. It will give you things like the stuff you need for like syntax highlighting, closed, basically controlling your open and close brackets and stuff like that. And it's the sort of thing that I definitely am going to keep it on my iPad, because the number of times where all I got to do is I got to change one line in this text file that's on this device, and that will like actually fix the problem for me, or that will enable this thing, and I can't do it because I've got my iPad, and every single text editor assumes that, oh, by text editor you just mean an unformatted word processing document. No, I mean a text editor. Let me actually control like what this file is and how another app is going to see it. And I also really like the way that they built it. It's also built on a framework calling Runestone, which is again basic text editing for iOS and iPad OS. So I think for $10, I feel like I'm supporting someone who's doing something really cool and bringing something to the iPad that I personally haven't really seen before.
Simon is the developer of Scriptable, which is an app that I've talked about for a while now. Yep. And Runestone is literally, he decided to redo Scriptable's text editor, and it's a JavaScript-based development environment. And then he did the thing, which is like, I'm going to make this a product that I'm going to make available for free with in-app purchase, and I'm going to open source it. And that's the beauty of it. So there are actually a bunch of other apps that are starting to come out for iOS where they've thrown away their code editor and replaced it with the Runestone framework because it's better. It's great.
Mm. That's very cool. I wonder if it supports Lisp. Anyway, nobody has yet.
He seems young. He might not know.
Lisp, what that is. You know. Yeah.
I'm holding on for APL.
I'm waiting for somebody to port Emacs to the iPad. Then you'll know it's made the big time. Mr. Jason Snell, what's your pick of the week?
You know, I sit on these podcasts, and you probably know this, Leo. You can't remember, like, what podcast did I say that on? I know I said that somewhere. Was it in a conversation with friends? Was it on a podcast? And I decided I'm not sure it was a New Year's resolution, but something I decided I wanted to do this year was have a little bit of a record of the stuff that I've said on some of my podcasts so that I could refer to it later instead of being like, I don't know, I think I talked about it. And I decided to look into Whisper, the OpenAI framework that allows you to generate text out of audio files anywhere. And so I first downloaded their Python-based version, which is great. The quality of the transcript based on the MP3 file you feed it is remarkable. But in Python, it's actually incredibly slow. It takes like 5 hours to do an hour of audio. But then I went to the website for whisper.app, or whisper.cpp, which is a guy compiled it using C. And that one is basically 1-to-1. So you can do an hour-long podcast in an hour and get a great transcript out of it. And it'll come out as a plain text. You can get it as a subtitles file. And then I found out you could tweak it so that you can actually use all the cores on my Mac Studio. And then I can do about 2-to-1 now, where I can do a 2-hour podcast in about 45 minutes. So I'm well on my way to transcribing my past podcast, so I know what the heck I said when somebody asked me, "Did you ever say this?" Which is great. And then there's a guy who's just come up with an app called Mac Whisper, which is really just a UI wrapper on the C library, and I think there will be many more of these. But really, what I wanted to just say is that the Whisper framework is so good. It doesn't identify different speakers' voices right now, so it's all sort of in one list. But the quality of the transcript, it's not perfect, but it is the best by far that I've seen. You can run it on your Mac, and it's a reasonable amount of time. That's kind of amazing. If you're capable at all with the command line, getting the C interface and installing that, it's a couple of command line commands, and then you can kind of go to town with it. It also makes me feel like we are definitely a year or two away from having auto-generated podcast transcripts that are completely readable and that identify the name of each speaker and that will be great for accessibility. But we're close, because the quality of this transcript and the fact that I can just run it on my Mac, and my Mac is more than capable of doing it, says we're almost there. We're right around the corner.
Is it like Stable Diffusion and other AI tools where you download models?
They have multiple models. The one I use is the highest quality of the English only models, which is called Medium. The small model isn't that great. The Medium model is a lot slower, but it's way better. And then they've got a high quality model that's also trained on a bunch of different languages. And one of the command line flags, I thought this was really great. If you are not comfortable listening to a podcast because it's not in your best language, there's a command line flag. You feed it something in a different language and say, while you're there, translate it into my language. Wow. And it'll do that too, which is pretty amazing.
We are just right on the bottom of the hockey stick. This is all about to transform, I think. I mean, it's amazing. So a year from now, it'll just be a button, or something. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I'm surprised Google hasn't done this yet, but I do think we are very, very close to the ability to like everything that's in the podcast world will be indexed somewhere, and you can find that stuff. And I guess that means that if we said something dumb 4 years ago, we're not going to be able to hide. But the benefits of having that available, so people can say, "Hey, Jason, when did you recommend that thing?" If you don't have a site like MBW Picks, you can still find stuff that I said 3 years ago if you want to. And I think that's all for the good.
Yeah, this is quite amazing. OpenAI, of course, they're the folks who do ChatGPT and DALL-E 2, and they were founded by Elon Musk, and Microsoft just put another, it's rumored, $10 billion into it. They're going to fold it into Office. And the point of it was to do AI development in the open, in public, as opposed to do it secretly behind doors at Google or Apple or Microsoft or elsewhere. And I think that's a very laudable goal, but also notice how much faster it's happening, right? And I think having these be open source and having people contribute to it and try it has made a huge difference.
Apple's building in the neural engine. Like this Mac Studio I've got has got a 8, 10, 12 core neural engine too. And this C build doesn't even use that, right? And it's not using the GPU, it's just using the CPU. So we've also seen that Apple is now embracing these AI models and trying to, because it's an advantage for Apple, because they've got that neural engine on their hardware that does this stuff really fast. So I think that that's going to be a next step too, is that we're going to see the next version of this. Somebody's going to do a build of this that really can floor it on Apple hardware, and I can't wait to see that.
It should be much faster than real time. You should be able to scan an hour in a minute or two.
I think it's going to be really exciting to see when you look at what we talked about last week, which was the movement of being able to take almost any book and turn it into a reasonably good thing to listen to. And then you look at this being able to translate into lots of languages, the amount of knowledge going back and forth is going to explode, and it's just going to be really interesting.
We're at a Cambrian explosion point. I really feel that. And 5 or 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, well, wow, remember we didn't have AI? It'd be like saying, remember when we didn't have shoes? Remember at the time before the wheel was invented? What a time.
Not only that, but this is technology. This specific thing is technology at its best, where take something that was available to people with resources and power, the Daily Show and other shows like that. They used to have at the very beginning people watching literally every single
That's
hour,
how they did it.
every single. Now they subscribe to expensive services that will basically look at keywords that are spoken during the stuff, and that's how they harvest their clips from. Now, when you say that, now anybody who's doing YouTube, anybody who's doing any sort of reporting can simply say, look, here is the past 2 days of Senate testimony on XYZ, or here is more appropriate local government, which doesn't provide like transcripts necessarily of every single board meeting here, but they might live stream it. Right, great. Let me just basically archive every single one of these ever done, so that if I want to find out what's being discussed, I don't have to sit through 3 hours worth of consumer.
And then you feed it to ChatGPT. And you say, tell me the 5 things that happened that I need to know about. I mean,
summarize this.
We're going to get more and more and more as the pile-on effect. Transcripts are just the beginning. That's just getting it into a form that the computer can then chew on. I mean, we're in a brave new world,
Yeah.
So long as CompuServe forum traffic is still in the land of ghosts and winds, I'm happy about all of this.
Google already archived all of Usenet posts from when I was in college, so we're doomed. It's over.
Those flame wars live on, ladies and gentlemen. Jason Snell, follow him at 6colors.com. If you go to 6colors.com/Jason, you'll see a really rather long list of all the things he does. It's amazing he finds time to be with us at all.
Got to keep the lights on, Leo. Got to keep the lights on.
He still has time to be in a curling league. So I admire that.
In fact, let's make that my plug of the day, right? How about that?
The Oakland Curling League?
the San Francisco Bay Curling. If you're in the Bay Area, you could go out. Curling is a really fun sport. It doesn't require you to be athletic at all. I do it. It's bayareacurling.com. They have a brand new facility.
Are you a
dedicated ice in
sweeper or a
Oakland.
pusher? What do you do?
You do all of it. You do all of it, right? You throw the rocks down and then you sweep and then and the whole thing. It's a lot of fun. They have Learn to Curls. You can come out and check it out. And if you are in another region that has especially a dedicated, but any curling club, it's a lot of fun. It's like, it's kind of like bowling mixed with chess. It's strategy and also physical. I think it's actually a really good nerd sport, and you should check. And it does not require you to be in tip-top aerobic shape, which is nice.
I'd like it better if it weren't on ice. Can we have curling on grass?
But you don't put on skates or anything. You just wear your sneakers, basically.
Or if you have special curling shoes. I know there are.
I have special curling shoes, but you don't need to have them. You don't have to have them.
I like croquet. Can croquet take off sometime soon? Because that's the same as curling.
It's yes,
but it's on
the sport of the masses, croquet.
Anybody with a well-blocked straw boater is welcome on any croquet pitch. That's what I like about the sport.
I would say I feel like curling and croquet are sibling sports. I mean, they're related. They're nerdy.
No, it's more curling is a little more like a bocce, I would say, or maybe shuffleboard. It's the idea of getting
I understand.
the ones that are closest to the target.
Obviously, you've never really played a lot of croquet. There's a considerable amount of that in croquet, except you have mallets. So instead of brooms, I just feel
there are no hoops to go through in curling, although that would be something if there were.
There should be curling hoops. Let's invent them. BayAreaCurling.com.
Yep, check it out. That's my other pick of the week, I guess, or something.
Slide
I don't know.
into your new obsession.
It's awesome. It's a lot of fun.
I was looking forward to getting into pickleball, but maybe, maybe curling is in my future.
But Jason, you need to answer the question that everybody wants to know before they'll even investigate this. Are you allowed to drink while doing it?
Oh, God,
in fact, usually you're encouraged to.
There you go. Okay.
It's the national sport of Canada. Do you need to know anything else?
It was invented in Scotland, but it's the national sport of Canada, and so drinking is involved in large parts of it. The most important rule of curling, of all the rules of curling, is winner buys.
Say no more, say no more. A wink is as good a nod to a blind man. Nudge, nudge. Thank you, Jason Snell. Andy Ihnatko, tell us about GBH. They dropped the W.
Exactly. Well, again, we're increasing our bandwidth by 25% by dropping that unnecessary W. It's also, think about the number of syllables in the W.
It's crazy. It's a single letter.
Very much.
And it has what double U. It has 3 syllables for 1 letter.
Okay, but also alphabetically, that used to put us at the very, very end of the list. With G, like, we're not being cheeky and making us like a GBH. We're just because we're the GBH.
Yeah, just
exactly.
The GBH. Yeah.
I am off this week, but I'm gone next Friday at 12:30, actually at the Boston Public Library at the studios there. So you can show up in person. You can live stream it at WGBHnews.org, listen to it later on WGBHnews.org, or go to the WGBH News channel on YouTube and watch it live or later.
That's cool. Yeah, I started in radio on the East Coast, and it made me really mad that I had to learn how to say W quickly and proficiently. W. K is so much better. Alex Lindsay of officehours.global. Hello. What's coming up?
We had Renee on yesterday.
Oh, nice.
So yesterday morning, we had our second hour. Renee came on and he dropped the heavy detail of how YouTube works. So it was just a bunch of Q&A. So he came on as his official capacity and as the liaison, as the creator liaison.
Nice.
And we just peppered him. We did what we do in office hours, which is that we peppered him with questions, and Renee answered them the way you would expect Renee to answer them, which is highly detailed at high velocity. It's probably the most dense description of things you need to know about being a YouTube creator that I've ever seen.
That's great. Everybody should watch it. And of course, you do put it on YouTube, so I'm sure everybody will.
It's all there. Yeah.
Today you talked about pencils.
Video pencil. So that is a drawing app on the iPad, so that it does NDI back and forth, and you can draw on just about anything.
A telestrator, if you will.
It's like a little telestrator.
Is that what
I wonder where they got that idea. Yeah. I don't use Video Pencil right now because the way my system is set up, it's set up a different way than the way it's designed to work. But I am looking at it and trying to figure out how to integrate it. So Michael came on. John Tatulis, who is one of the founders of sound devices is going to be on tomorrow. So we're pretty excited to have John on. And then we've got, we're talking about CES on Thursday. We decided to let the dust settle on CES and all the other announcements come out. So Thursday, we're going to talk about CES. And then Friday, we've got Andy Carluccio and the whole the events team coming on. So Jonathan and Sam. Oh, yeah, he's going to come on and answer questions. There's nothing new. They're just they come on about once a month to answer questions. So we have a whole bunch of questions for them, and we'll that's what we do. We ask a lot of questions. So anyway, that's the week.
It's not just them. You too can join in with the questions. Go to officehours.global, click the Join Us button, and you can find out how you can be part of the Office Hours crew. You can always watch it on YouTube without participating, but I think being able to ask questions is very cool.
Helps.
And if your question is, how do I get this guy, Alex Lindsay, working on my next event? Well, there's an easy answer, 090.media. That's his day job. And he is available anytime, as long as it's in the day or something. Yeah.
It's good.
As long as it's after office hours. Hey, everybody. Leo Laporte here. I am the founder and one of the hosts at the TWiT Podcast Network. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do here at TWiT, because I think it's unique. And I think for anybody who is bringing a product or a service to a tech audience, you need to know about what we do here at TWiT. We've built an amazing audience of engaged, intelligent, affluent listeners who listen to us and trust us when we recommend a product. Our mission statement as TWiT is to build a highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. Well, already your ears should be perking up at that, because highly engaged is good for you. Tech enthusiasts, if that's who you're looking for, this is the place. We do it by offering them the knowledge they need to understand and use technology in today's world. And I hear from our audience all the time, part of that knowledge comes from our advertisers. We are very careful. We pick advertisers with great products, great services, with integrity, and introduce them to our audience with authenticity and genuine enthusiasm. And that makes our host-read ads different from anything else you can buy. We are literally bringing you to the attention of our audience and giving you a big, fat endorsement. We like to create partnerships with trusted brands who are in it for the long run, long-term partners that want to grow with us. And we have so many great success stories. Tim Broom, who founded IT Pro TV in 2013, started advertising with us on day one, has been with us ever since. He said, quote, "We would not be where we are today without the TWiT network." I think the proof is in the pudding. Advertisers like IT Pro TV and Audible that have been with us for more than 10 years, they stick around because their ads work. And honestly, isn't that why you're buying advertising? You get a lot with TWiT. We have a very full service attitude. We almost think of it as kind of artisanal advertising, boutique advertising. You'll get a full service continuity team. People who are on the phone with you, who are in touch with you, who support you with everything from copywriting to graphic design. So you are not alone in this. We embed our ads into the shows. They're not added later. They're part of the shows. In fact, often they're such a part of our shows that our other hosts will chime in on the ad saying, "Yeah, I love that." Or just the other day, one of our hosts said, "Man, I really got to buy that." That's an additional benefit to you because you're hearing people our audience trusts saying, "Yeah, that sounds great." We always over-deliver on impressions, so you know you're going to get the impressions you expect. The ads are unique every time. We don't pre-record them and roll them in. We are genuinely doing those ads in the middle of the show. We'll give you great onboarding services. Ad tech with pod sites, that's free for direct clients. Gives you a lot of reporting, gives you a great idea of how well your ads are working. You'll get courtesy commercials. You actually can take our ads and share them across social media and landing pages. That really extends the reach. There are other free goodies too, including mentions in our weekly newsletter that's sent to thousands of fans, engaged fans who really want to see this stuff. We give you bonus ads and social media promotion too. So if you want to be a long-term partner, introduce your product to a savvy, engaged tech audience, visit twit.tv/advertise. check out those testimonials. Mark McCrary is the CEO of Authentic. You probably know him, one of the biggest original podcast advertising companies. We've been with him for 16 years. Mark said the feedback from many advertisers over 16 years across a range of product categories, everything from razors to computers, is that if ads and podcasts are going to work for a brand, they're going to work on Twitch shows. I'm very proud of what we do because it's honest, it's got integrity, it's authentic, and it really is a great introduction to our audience of your brand. Our listeners are smart, they're engaged, they're tech savvy, they're dedicated to our network, and that's one of the reasons we only work with high integrity partners that we've personally and thoroughly vetted. I have absolute approval on everybody. If you've got a great product, I want to hear from you. Elevate your brand by reaching out today at advertise@twit.tv. Break out of the advertising norm. Grow your brand with host-read ads on twit.tv. Visit twit.tv/advertise for more details, or you can email us advertise@twit.tv if you're ready to launch your campaign now. I can't wait to see your product. So give us a ring. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to our Club Twit members who make our shows possible. They're $7 a month. Facilitates a whole bunch of cool stuff. You get all the shows ad-free because you're giving us money. We don't need to show you ads. You also get shows we never put out anywhere else on the Twit Plus feed, like Hands on Macintosh, Hands on Windows, the Untitled Linux Show, Stacy's Book Club last week. Next week, it's Inside Twit with Lisa and me talking about what's going on inside Twit. That's January. That's this week. That's Thursday. Next week, it's Win2DAO, or in a couple of weeks, of All About Android. Daniel Suarez will be joining us to talk about his new book. The author of Freedom, TM, and Demon has a new book, Critical Mass, coming out this next month, and he'll be joining us February 10th for a club-only Q&A. We'll later put that out on Triangulation, don't worry. But if you want to ask Daniel a question or talk about his other books, you can do that. It's one of the many things we do inside the club. And, of course, the Discord, too, is a lot of fun. Place to discuss the shows as they're on the air. Says Fonzie. But also any other topic. I hang out in the coding topic. We have our own Minecraft servers, which are back up, by the way. I apologize. I didn't realize they were down, but they're up now in the Let's Play. There's a lot of stuff going on. All you have to do is go to twit.tv/clubtwit, sign up today. We would love to have you in the club, and it does help us generate new programming. That's where This Week in Space came from. And also keep the lights on, which is always a good thing. Thank you all for being here. We do the show every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1900 UTC. There's a live stream that's going 24/7, but it's not reruns during this time because it's brand new MacBreak Weeklies. That's at live.twit.tv. There's live video and live audio there. If you're watching live, chat with us, either in the Club Twit Discord or in our IRC, open to all. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at twit.tv /MBW. And if you're watching after the fact, there are also after the fact discussion zones, not just the Club Twit Discords, but also we have a Twit forum at twit.community that's open to all, and our Twit Mastodon instance, which is quite popular, at twit.social. Both of those are open to all, although thank you, club members, for subsidizing those. You can also, subscribe. In fact, that's probably the best way to get the show. If you just go to your favorite podcast player and say, I want to hear MacBreak Weekly the minute it's available, it'll download it for you automatically. And we will see you then next week. But now I'm afraid it's time to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Hey, folks, I'm Ant Pruitt. I have a question for you. How do you think your hardworking team, with a Club Twit corporate subscription plan, of course, show your appreciation and reward your tech team with a subscription to Club Twit? Keep everyone informed and entertained with podcasts covering the latest in tech. With the Club Twit subscription, they get access to all of our podcasts ad-free. And they also get access to our members-only Discord, access to exclusive outtakes and behind-the-scenes footage and special content like the fireside chats that I enjoy hosting. Plus, they also get shows like Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, and the Untitled Linux Show. So, Go to twit.tv/clubtwit and look for corporate plans for complete details.